go ahead and get started. If they show up, let us know. So the next item is just legislative priorities. You've seen what I included was both the Association of Washington Cities 2024 priorities and what we had last year, and a couple of thoughts. What we already worked with Blake on doing is the two items to move forward with the legislators. Our own is the project Osborne for the library move as a capital project, and then also the Adamstrasse for funding from transportation to knock that road the rest of the way through, or get at least part of that done from the state. So those two items we're suggesting adding to our priorities as specific items, but then again, this is a chance to think about it, to add. We don't want to have too long a list. We want to be realistic. We usually do have 3 to 5, things of our own, and then chance for you to gnaw on stuff and let me know. We'll come forward, try to have something for you in the next meeting. We can get started. Association of Washington Cities, nice part of being on that board is the fact that they had 4 priorities, and I said, why drop housing? We're in crisis. And just because you got something done, right? The legislator did quite a bit to add to housing. I go, you're still way behind. Let's keep it on there. So they voted to put that back on their agenda, as well as it will be on ours as well.
So are you proposing that our 2024 legislative priorities continue forward
For the most part,
as they're listed now?
yeah, it's just to give you what we've done, but yeah, we can move those forward. Like I said, 2 specific items to add are the Osborne and the Adamstrasse, but
Well, these were priorities for this year, but they're not completed.
no, they're not.
Can we get the Osborne demolition of the rest of the building on?
Of course.
Well, we'll ask for a capital grant to help with the Osborne project, and it's not demolition specific, it'll be the project, but
What do you mean, the project?
the concept of moving the library over and demolishing the large part of that structure, but then carrying the rest of it for community space and library like we talked about. Yeah, we could basically just bring forward with the same and add those 2 specific ones.
I mean, that's been on the docket longer than in our vision site, longer than the library. So I think it should be able to scoot up there somewhere, get it out of the way.
Just the demolition part, what?
Demo it, yeah.
I think it's kind of an all-encompassing project, right?
Yeah,
We're trying to relocate the library so that we have more space for staff here in City Hall.
Yeah, I know.
Coupled with a partial demo at Osborne.
I'm just squealing with the demo.
right.
Get it out of there, take a look.
It makes sense usually on a project like that is you just wait until you're ready and move on the whole thing and get,
I'm ready.
wrap it up. Well, as soon as we get the funding.
Is there anything I can do to try to get funding? I'm serious.
Play the lottery,
Well,
but anyway, You can email me, you can suggest, like I said, we don't need to spend a lot of time today on it, but we'll bring it forward and get something in front of you to pass. And keep working with our legislators, whoever they might be. All right. Let's go ahead then. On to the rate and fee schedule.
I'm not sure who was gonna talk on this one. Go for it, Shanta.
So council, this is just a call for you to consider, each year, we've already put it out to staff. And we're working with community development with their team. They'll have a lot of changes forthcoming. And then, of course, all the utilities will fine tune once we have the rate study finalized. So all of those should be in the next time you see a draft version of this document. But this is just here for you to give us any feedback. If there's something in particular that you want us to take a look at, research that we aren't already planning to do. If you don't have anything today, that's perfectly fine. But if you go through it and think of something, go ahead and just email. You can email Selby, myself, Andy, and Maggie.
Okay.
And then we'll just take it from there.
I've got some questions on this one. This is behind D, right?
Yeah.
This is what?
Behind D.
D, right.
Okay.
On page 2. See, where is it? Down in the bottom, in the last paragraph, and it starts second line from the top, or right in there. The fee schedule indicates there is no hourly fee charged for a specific type of application, even if outsourced, hourly fees will not be charged. Can you give me an example?
Sorry, which item?
It's at the bottom of page 2.
It's right here. I would surmise that in the past that was put in either by Connie or Lilith. And state law, if you don't have a set fee identified in your rate and fee schedule, you technically can't charge someone a fee. So I think that sentence is just clarifying for the reader that if there's absolutely nothing within here that pertains to what it is they're trying to have done, then potentially they wouldn't be charged a fee. Now, I do know that there's a clause to that. Somewhere in community development section, there is an hourly rate.
We're going through this as a group to clean it up, so I appreciate the question. I might not have answers for you as to why, but that's why we're here.
We'll have several questions, actually.
I'm highlighting that one.
Okay,
So if you turn the page, the very top section is kind of that clause. And the second paragraph says, the applicant shall be responsible for all consultant costs, any related staff time, and a 10% administrative fee for the city expenses involved in working with the consultant and the applicant. So that's kind of the catch-all with community development, that if they don't have, like, through these next pages where they have very specific fees, this covers them if they have to go out to a consultant and hire a consultant.
will, on the next page, page 3, will E, is that, will that cover it?
It could,
Okay,
it could.
okay, thanks. Where's the next one? The next one is on page 5. Number 7. I didn't know what a residential retaining wall was exactly.
So that's a retaining wall like what you'd have in your yard, or it's typically when a lot has a grade. Significant grade change, and there needs to be a wall there to support the surcharge. And it's requires a building permit if it's over 4 feet in height, supporting a surcharge, things like that. So that's the fee if somebody was to build a retaining wall.
Okay, so if your backyard, goes up to the next person, but you don't have a retaining wall, you just have rocks to keep it from falling down.
I mean, that it's
that the
existing,
same
it's
thing?
existing, but yeah,
Okay.
if they were to come in and put in those rocks and it was over 4 feet height, there, I mean, that is technically a retaining wall. And we'd want to look at it because those require engineering and things, so they don't fail.
Okay, well, it's behind my house and so
Yeah.
it's been there for 40 years.
But if they
50
come and
years.
try to modify it or redo it, then
Okay.
we'll look at it from a building permit perspective.
All right, on page 7, number 15, bed and breakfast annual permit. And I said, does someone make sure the owner is there on site while the unit has somebody staying in it?
We do an annual review every year, so we go through and we meet with the property owner. They fill out an affidavit, they fill out a form that says they're meeting all their criteria. We do a fire and life safety, self-inspection, and then every 3 years, the fires will actually go out. So I mean, we are trying, we don't get complaints, and we can tell them it needs to be owner occupied. I haven't had any complaints that people are renting their Airbnbs and not being owner occupied.
They probably don't know the owner's supposed to be there.
What?
They probably, if someone's renting, they probably don't know the owner's supposed to be there.
They're required to on any of their online, like Airbnb or whatever, they're required to say it's an owner occupied B&B. And we do check that.
Okay,
Each renewal, we make sure they're meeting all the conditions that they're required to meet.
okay. I just have 3 more questions. On page 13, 4B. And I've just put a highlight through Cascade Medical Center utility reimbursement fee. Wondering what that was.
So that was done, oh, let's see, it expires in 2031, so I believe it would have been 2015 or 16, because these are, I believe, 15-year reimbursement agreements. So Cascade Medical Center was part of when we did Commercial Street in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted some additional work that benefited them directly. And so that was done. And a reimbursement area was defined for them to get reimbursed later. If someone within that defined area connects a new connection, they have to pay a portion of that connection fee back to CMC. We collect the money and then we pay it to CMC. To my knowledge, we have not had any CMC new connections. However, there is a potential big one, and that would be Robert Johnson. And that's also the same for the DNR. So they're both right in that same area, and there's a whole circle of area that was defined when that was completed.
Okay. Thanks. Second to the last question. Let's see, or maybe it's not the second to the last. Yeah, it is. Sorry about this. Trying to get these pages apart. Oh my goodness, so I may have to pass this down so somebody get the pages apart. Page 18. For the multifamily and the residential customers for their monthly rates. Will we be going over that at another time?
Yeah, that's gonna be revised as part of the utility rate study, and that'll
Okay.
actually be at your next session. We'll talk about that one.
Okay, I thought maybe that was right.
Mhm.
And,
I can clarify though, what you're reading there. The multifamily is charged at $35.52 3 times if there's 3 units.
but still, each unit is only paying 35. So are they using as much as the residents?
Well, that was what I brought up at the last meeting when we talked about
Yeah.
multifamily. And how a lot of our multifamily units are single occupants. So you don't have a full family in those,
Mhm.
in most cases. So they're typically using less water. There's less sewage. And that is why the rate is lower, but each unit does pay that. So if it was a triplex, in this case, that bill would be the $105, $106. rather than the 6445 that a single family residential pays.
Do we have some kind of account of how many people live in these units?
No,
Whether it's one or
no,
15 or whatever?
no, you can't. You can't go in and ask
Okay.
how many people live in your home.
I think there should be an adjustment there.
And we are adjusting them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And revising the whole structure of how they think.
Yep.
Okay, and just under miscellaneous on page 19, the last page. I just wrote down, is someone checking grease traps downtown in the businesses?
We do have a fog program that's completed by our wastewater treatment plant operators.
How often do they go down?
We're working towards monthly.
Good, okay,
I was gonna ask about that, Andy, because when I did a tour of the
yeah,
wastewater treatment plant, they mentioned the impact of grease and grease traps, and that not all restaurants had installed those. Do we know, are there any restaurants, business folks who haven't complied with that?
You know, I have to dig into that a little bit deeper. I don't have a great answer for you right now, but it is a program that has been in place, and then we're working on kind of revamping what that looks like.
Okay, so we don't know.
I don't have a great answer for you right now.
Okay,
I can say that, to chime in, as we get business license requests through the state, and we go out with our building and fire and do an inspection on every new business that comes in. And if it's a new business that requires a grease trap, they don't have one, we require them to put it in at that time before they can even open their business. So we're kind of catching them with new businesses.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't maybe trigger a building permit, it's just a change of tenant. We still go through and check, if they don't have that grease trap, it's required. We look at their menu, we look at all that, so
okay,
that is a way to catch it
right,
at some point
Okay.
too, so.
And we also caught change of uses that same way. And we really vamped up and started the fog program with the third hire at the wastewater treatment plant. Their main goal was to go into every single business and find out, and we found small mom and pops doing little things. That, you know, they're not a restaurant, but they might be selling, we'll just say greasy donuts or something of that nature.
yeah,
And they didn't have the system for that, so those kinds were caught when they did that.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good, thank you.
thanks.
One more?
Pardon me?
Was there one more?
No. Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
I was gonna ask just, maybe it's gonna come up in the next study session. The percentage of rating, we covered that once before. I don't know if it was in finance or here, Chantal, how much the water, the sewer. I think the stormwater is remaining the same, but water and sewer going up a percentage.
Yes, so Kevin with HDR, he is scheduled to come to your next meeting for the entire study session.
Okay,
We will have another full in-depth dive. Like Andy said, we've been working on redesigning the rates from what we've heard from you so far.
okay,
So he'll deep
deep dive,
dive into water.
okay,
There will be increases, I anticipate, from each fund overall,
mhm,
but certain classes may not be as bad as others.
right,
And he'll go into those details.
okay, all right.
I'm sorry, I can't remember if you were at the last study session.
I don't think,
missed it.
no, no,
He was out of town.
I missed that whole great presentation.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, I was gonna touch on this later tonight anyway, but if those of you that weren't at the last study session have the time to watch the video, it may be worthwhile just to give a little bit more background information before the next study session. There.
Okay, great, Andy, thank you.
Yeah, because there was a lot of prep for it, so yeah, that would be just that section of where he presented would be great to review.
It was Andy at our last study session.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah, you're right. Doing it, but giving that same background of what we're hoping to accomplish.
While we're on the topic, if you have any questions leading up to the next study session too, don't hesitate to reach out. Between Chantal and I, we've been meeting with Kevin pretty regularly, and we're happy to answer specific questions too.
Okay.
All right, moving right along then. 2024 quarterly project update.
This is your quarterly update on all our various projects. Do you have any
I
questions?
have a bunch of questions.
Not you, mine.
Expecting
I
some
lost track of
questions.
this.
If not, we're doing a great job.
It doesn't mean you've not done a great job. I just want to make sure I understand everything right.
What's going on?
We
On
are,
page 2 of 11, second sentence, I underlined likely begin in earnest in 2024. And I wanted someone to explain.
Wayfinding.
Mhm.
This has been discussed with the downtown steering committee to some degree. To be honest with you, I see Kara and Maggie assigned to this one. I believe that a lot of the wayfinding will be wrapped into the pedestrian plaza project that we're gonna be kicking off with SOMAS with the downtown steering committee. We have discussed replacing the street signs that you see that are both in English and German. You've been in some of those conversations
Mhm.
during the downtown steering committee, and I'm not sure where Sue stands on that. She was gonna reorder the exact same things that we have. I know that there was an issue with when we had done some signs on Commercial Street directing people to the restrooms. The products we received wasn't exactly what we were anticipating. And I will follow up with Sue and see where she stands on replacing those signs. We had discussed that with the downtown steering committee. But regarding the rest of the wayfinding, I think that we wrapped into the downtown pedestrian plaza project.
And is the plan to put it in English on top and then smaller in German below?
I don't recall what the guidance was from the downtown steering committee. I have to review our
It
minutes.
was flip-flopping. I
I think
don't
it was
remember.
flip-flopping.
It was flip-flopping and getting the brighter, more distinct one in the English, I think. But yeah, it's all.
I will follow up with Sue on that.
Has the downtown steering committee talked about standardizing all of the wayfinding signs?
We discussed what we did discuss was just reordering the ones that we have currently, because there was a lot of discussion about those. Historical documents anyway, from previous meetings, that Sue brought a whole binder of, this is what was decided, so we thought, well.
Some of them are kind of hard to read, though.
Yeah, what we had talked about was utilizing our, what we've now adopted as our city font, which is a little easier to read. So changing that, changing the font.
Mhm.
There would be not much more irritating than going to a community that, is like ours with the Bavarian and having the Bavarian bigger for everybody. Having it small, the Bavarian bigger
Mhm.
rather than the English.
Yeah.
It's like for the parking lot, the different names for them. I still don't know what they are.
Well, they're all named after areas in.
I know,
is my understanding. But I will follow up with Sue on that project for the signs that currently exist that need to be replaced because they're so faded.
Okay, thanks. My second question is on the top of page 4. Can you just talk about that? I've just got a question mark by it, so.
The Seaville, like, basin, the sewer basin.
Director.
So,
Yes, the combined sewer.
Yeah, so this exists in the greater Seaville area, but, it's not. I actually kind of use the wrong language here. It's not a combined system, but it's a cross-connected system. So in the existing manholes that we have on Seaville and a lot of the cross streets that tie into Seaville, we have stormwater on the bottom of the manhole that runs through, like a normal stormwater manhole would. And then elevated above inside the same manhole is an open trough of gravity sewer. And so we have the potential for cross connection between the sewer and stormwater in that area where if the stormwater surcharges and fills the manhole, it mixes with the sewer. And then if we have a sewer backup, it backs up into the manhole and overflows into stormwater. So both are problems. And this is really just.
So cute.
Great.
This is just a project to address that,
Will they be paying for that?
who would say.
People up in the, on the other
Oh, and
side?
residents.
Well, those that were doing anything with the sewer and taking care of it, wouldn't they have to pay a
No.
monthly sewer rate of some kind?
So these are,
Is it existing?
yeah, these are existing connections. I'm not entirely sure what you're asking.
Well, is this up on the hill?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, this exists all the way down to Whitman.
Okay, this is in town.
It's in
I
town.
thought it was
Oh.
back up on the
No,
hillside.
no, this is the existing system that we have. along
Okay.
the-
Good, okay.
Well, not good, but.
So I'm curious though, because we did get some money towards that.
1.8, right?
Yeah. And is it something that you can use partial?
Absolutely.
to?
Yeah, this is more just, and I think I'm gonna put a, staffing capacities at the time, etc.
Yeah, right. I was just curious about whether we had to, because I think the whole thing is like 5 or 6 or was something
I think it
greater.
started with like 3.5 mil, something like that, but we have the 1.8 and then, ecology is funding our general sewer plan and wastewater facility. Plan. And they also said if we evaluate this further, there's a potential for more grant funds, from them as well, once we finish and approve the justice center. So that's how, I mean, it's very much something that can be done in phases. It doesn't-
Okay, on page. I forgot my glasses. On page 5. I have, 3 questions. On the very top one with the security fencing well and deck.
Yes.
Do they have that set yet?
No, this is still where we're going through the environmental permitting phase of that.
Grief. Okay. That one really bothers me, as you guys already know. Okay, down on the parking improvements, ADA improvements continue to be made.
Yeah, so we worked with our consultant to figure out where it makes the most sense to add additional ADA parking stalls.
Mhm.
And what we've done is we've added some ADA stalls to 9th Street. We flip-flopped some of the loading zones. So the loading zone is all on one side of the street, which I think is the east side of the street. On the west side of the street, we added some more ADA parking. We switched around some ADA stalls over by the fest hall. Shannon would give you the details.
Mhm.
She's not here right now and I can't remember every recommendation and what we've implemented. But what we heard from the consultant was, I think we needed 4 additional ADA stalls to be designated in order to be compliant, but our goal was to add more than.
So if you have an ADA pass or whatever it's called, can you park anywhere?
You
And
can-
have put that on?
You can park anywhere on an on-street, you can park in any on-street stall for free for as long as you like with an ADA placard. But in our lots, we stopped charging for the ADA stalls that are in the lots. But we do expect you to pay if you're parked anywhere else, if you're parked in any spot other than the ADA stall. In a parking lot, we would expect payment.
This is quite an issue one day at the pool about those 280 spots.
We did hear that. Shannon's plan was to add 2 additional stalls closer to the highway in that parking lot. I don't believe that's been done yet.
Okay. So if you come in and you're in a wheelchair, what have you, and those spots are taken and there's nothing left but out on the street somewhere, or not street, but way back in the parking lot, you just are out of luck.
You would be out of luck, yeah.
Okay.
But they did review all of our parking lots and the number of stalls we have, and we are in compliance.
Okay. Now that I have one, it's interesting. And I didn't know whether I could just go into a regular parking spot and put the ADA thing up and be okay.
No, we'd expect payment. We used to charge in our parking lots for the ADA stalls as well. And then I asked staff to stop doing that.
Oh, okay.
You can in lots, you just can't on the street.
Okay, because I did that the other day and I thought, I didn't know if I could or couldn't, or I didn't know what the rules were. And nobody that comes here probably does either.
When you get your handicapped placard, it should, I don't know what the state does, but I've gone online and the rules are clearly there.
Okay,
So I would assume that when the state reviews your application and issues you your placard, they would tell you what the rules are, but maybe they don't.
no, they didn't.
How come we just don't? We let them park for free on the street? Why don't we let them park for free in the parking lot?
It's state law doesn't require us to let them park for free in parking lots.
Cause it's not public. land. Yeah. Streets, the streets.
They can on the street.
So we're being the meanie.
No,
No.
Huh, that's a state requirement. just
it is a state
because,
requirement to allow handicap and to not charge on street.
On street.
So part of that is likely driven by taxation as well.
Hmm.
So we, as a city, have to pay use taxes to the state for our parking lots, but not for the streets.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if
That's
that's
connected.
part of it, is they decided streets are right of way. If everyone's where a lot, you've privately bought it, whether you're a city or a private property owner.
Hmm.
You've bought it, you've improved it, you've done all these other things where streets are standard across the board.
Yeah, I just think that's a bit nebulous that wouldn't,
It's confusing for our visitors.
Yeah.
for Sure.
okay.
Okay, and just on the bottom of that page, I just wondered if there was a further update on the Christmas Village Lights Public Safety Review.
No, we have a meeting coming up. I can't tell you
Okay.
the date. It's interesting because we've had opposing viewpoints for what we should do, what the fate of the traffic control is. From my understanding, DOT no longer wants to operate the event coordinating center that we've always had on those first 3 Saturdays. The sheriff's office would like us to see us expand it to every Saturday between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So also there was a request to move the event coordinating center to station number 3 on the Chum Stick. And then the sheriff's asked us if they do that to leave City Hall open for a warming center. And if we do that, then we have to pay someone to be in this room just in case a sheriff's deputy wants to come and warm themselves. When we have the fest hall open as a warming center already. So we'll be discussing the future of this at a forthcoming meeting with all the players.
Okay. On page. Oh, okay, I thought I already did that. Okay, well, I have one there. We're getting to the end of it, you guys. On page 8. With the with the Osborne property redevelopment, you probably answered the question. Said, what money do we have? Can we demo?
Well, we don't want to demolish until we know the fate of the overall project. Because if we did a partial demolition, we'd have to spend money to build a wall to make sure that the building remains weathertight. So the idea is to lop it off. You've seen the plans. And to do an active reuse of that facility for the library and community space, including the gym and a commercial kitchen and meeting rooms, et cetera. We did apply to Commerce for a $2 million matching grant through the library capital improvement program. Although I haven't had an official award that we weren't granted those dollars, we have been told that we're not going to be granted those dollars. But we were also told in the same exchange that they very much like the project. They think it's a fantastic project. And they encouraged us to apply again in April or May of 26 when the next round comes, and those funds would then be available in July of 27. They really, like the project. They just felt that we weren't quite as advanced and we didn't do as good a job with the narrative as we could have to make the case for the project. So when the people were reviewing it, they said, there's already a library here. And that's where we were proposing to move the library is pretty close. So they didn't understand the special circumstances that we have when library patrons are fighting for parking with the tourists. And we often get complaints from people who want to visit the library and have a difficult time finding a parking spot so they can visit the library. And that's year round that we get those complaints. So when I explained it to the grant coordinator on the phone, she said, well, I wish you would have put all those words into the narrative. And I failed to do that because we do make a very compelling case for the project. The other thing that we didn't have was a resolution from the council dedicating funding. So we didn't prove that we had the support of the council and the matching funds for the project. So we're learning. We just didn't put together a strong enough grant application, but the project is exciting to them. We did apply for a technical correction through HUD to repurpose the $941,000 appropriation that Congresswoman Schreier got for us for another project that didn't materialize. I'm waiting to hear from them. I was told I should know in October. But a year ago when I applied or I submitted a technical correction, it took 6 months longer than we anticipated to hear back. And my contact at the Department of Ecology, that former council member Jason Lundgren put me in touch with, the Mary Monahan, who facilitated the city getting the integrated planning grant for the car wash property. They put me in touch with Bridget Harris from Commerce, who's running the Brownfield revolving loan program through Commerce. And we don't have the contract yet, but we will be getting $225,000 for the asbestos abatement at the Osborne. So that's the first thing that needs to happen before anything can happen with that property is to do the asbestos abatement. So I am happy that we at least have those dollars earmarked for us now. And I've spoken to Bridget, and again, everybody thinks it's a great idea. Everybody thinks it's a great project idea. We just need to do more work and get more funding line. And what Mara Isaacson at Commerce for the Library Capital Improvement Program told us is they like to be the last dollars in. So what they want to see is that we've demonstrated that we've gotten other grants where we've committed other city funds or library funds, because the library has close to $500,000 for the project as well. Demonstrating all of that, and they want to be the last dollars in. Whereas the way I approached it was, we'll see if we get this grant. If we get this grant, then we'll go forward and we'll figure the rest out. They want us to do it the other way. They want us to figure the rest out and then get the grant. Of course.
And so are they excited about the green space and playground area we'll have?
They're just you. That's you.
They are very excited about, and they recognize the fact that we used all of our ARPA funds and general fund dollars to build a fully inclusive playground. They think this is that extending that property for a library and community use is a great extension of that, is a great use of that property. So yeah, they do think it's a great idea.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think we have one more. On the bottom of page 9. The 2024 street maintenance construction, second from the bottom.
Yeah,
And the scrub seal, is there an update on that, or are you doing that later for your?
no, I can update right now. The street maintenance is now 100% complete. That was just primarily downtown and a couple of the residential streets, primarily the ones that weren't impacted by the scrub seal. They got like crack seal, some little pavement repaired. That one is done now. And then the scrub seal, they're adjusting utilities right now, and then also will be striking, which is currently planned for later this week. But I haven't got an update. That's about a week ago. They got a scheduled date they should be striking. So after that, there'll be a substantial completion on that project.
Okay. Sounds good. And I guess the water rights transfer project is my last question, and I'm wondering how that works.
So this is that source swap feasibility study that's taking place.
Are you saying source spot?
Source.
Oh, wow.
To swap the source of our municipal drinking water supply from the iceful to additional groundwater wells that are hydrologically connected to the wind engine. So that's Andy's project, and I'm sure she can give you an update if you ask.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now we're looking to see where we can drill test wells. So we're working with the private property owner to try to gain access to their land, and then looking at some city-owned property we have as well, just to see what the feasibility of drilling wells is. And then if those wells are determined to be feasible and produce water quantity quality. Then we can continue reevaluating what our future source will be. We will always maintain our existing, well, not always, but we intend to maintain our existing well field, but this is really just looking at getting us off the sides of the creek.
And are there anybody that seems interested? Because I know the first time we talked about it,
Yeah,
it didn't sound like anybody was up for it.
yeah, we actually reached out to all the same property owners that were originally contacted, and we have one that seems quite willing, so, we're actually meeting with someone to start drafting an agreement with them this week.
So if we buy the property that, no.
No, not right now.
No, we won't. We would have to drill the well first, so.
Yeah, so this is really like the test well phase.
Okay.
So we'd have a drill rig go out, drill a well, and then they'd pump against it for like 2 weeks and see, yeah, again, just what the aquifer characteristics look like.
Okay.
And then from there, the agreement would outline what our paths forward are depending on what the well produces. So it would outline our rights, under this agreement. If the well is productive, like what our path forward would be to eventually acquiring the property, or if it's not productive, how we exit out of that agreement and abandon the well.
Okay, thanks.
And two of the potential well sites are also on the golf course property, and that's one of the sticking points with my negotiations with the golf club on the golf courses.
Would it take part of the golf course?
They've strategically located two potential well sites that would have a minimum impact on the golf club, but I can't say that it would have zero impact.
Okay.
Andy, where is that one site that is a possibility that the homeowner is kind of considering? Where's that located? Where is that?
Yeah, it's off East Leavenworth Road, close to the confluence of Icicle Creek and the Wenatchee River.
Okay, all right.
That would it would get us the furthest away from our existing wells, so it'd be, if it would produce, it'd be ideal, but.
Right.
Yeah, it's also pretty convenient. It's close to our distribution system. It's redundant down East Leavenworth. We also have one down Icicle. So as far as tying into the rest of the system, it'd be pretty ideal.
Right. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I had a couple of questions. On page 6, waterfront parking lot improvements.
Yeah.
Are we talking about Barn Beach? I wasn't sure where that parking lot was.
That's a good question. It's the one at the end of 9th Street and then you go down Main. Is that
Yeah,
what it's
that's
Barn Beach?
Yeah, that's Barn
Yes,
Beach.
that one.
Okay, all right. So we're actually, whenever the funds come available, whatever. Oh, I see. I missed the whole year. Sorry about that. Review of solid waste collection, same page, and recycling operations. We've got the grants, all the grant. Are we, do we have any real, well, I guess you're just gonna do the pilot study and then take a look at the results.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that USDA grant was funding a program that was pretty much already up in its pilot stages. And that's between Witten doing the composting, and what they've utilized this grant for is buying compostable bags. You've seen some of these things in the claims. We're buying those big brown bags, and those green containers are called Slim Jims for the restaurant, so they can hold their food waste in those and then bring them out into their composting containers. So that's to help Witten with the actual composting, and it's for Waste Loop to do food reduction, education and outreach.
Okay,
We are just now hitting the 1 year mark. And Ariana is submitting the reports for all of that to the
Okay.
grantor.
will there be a presentation here?
Oh, Ariana would love to come back and do a presentation, especially when we get closer to the tail end of it.
Good,
Yeah,
I'd like to have that one.
yeah, absolutely.
And I have not followed up with Robette recently. I know that she came and discussed with the council the idea of offering curbside pickup for compost. I believe the council said that they'd be interested in learning more about that,
Right,
but I haven't heard anything from her about whether that's going to move forward.
where they're at. Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have.
Right, we'll move on then to the unit lot subdivision. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The council tonight is being provided with some documents from the planning commission's most recent meeting in September. This is going to be a new chapter to the subdivision code and used as a tool in all zoning districts for as an alternative to the condominium ownership that we already passed. I have a whole presentation that I was going to walk through with you tonight. I do want to be careful of Mike Smith's time. I asked him to come tonight in response to the email we received from RC3 with some concerns about wildfire risk. And so I would request that he kind of start off for the sake of time, because I can always follow up with more of this at a later date. But he has a presentation prepared for you.
Thank you, Maggie.
For anybody who doesn't know me, Deputy Chief Mike Smith, Chief of Operations for the Fire District, also the Fire Marshal for the City of Leavenworth. So this came up, I don't know who all saw the email. There's a concerned group of citizens. They wanted us to adopt a FEMA document. It's a great document. It's very broad. It is called it's from the Marshall Fire Mitigation Assessment Team, but best practices for wildfire resilient subdivision planning. It's very broad. It's written, again, it's a recommended practice, best practice, as opposed to like a code that you would adopt. But I think there was some confusion maybe about what we're already doing, how that would tie in with these FEMA recommendations. So this is kind of going to be a comparison about FEMA's key issues that they've identified and what we're doing already to mitigate them. A lot of word verbiage, but that's kind of what all of this is. So the key issues listed in that FEMA, that's the document number, but they're best practices for subdivision planning. The key issue, the number one they listed was wildfire hazard and risk mapping. The Washington State DNR published a DNR risk map in 2018. They're currently in the process of releasing their new one that will be used for the statewide police code. But we've also done a ton. There's been several entities. We did the CWPP is the biggest one, which is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. When we did that, there was local, it's divided into zones. We're zone H. Each zone was broken down and risk mapping was done for each zones. And that just shows where the greatest risk of fire is, where the structures are, and how that interacts. And there's about 8 different sets of maps for our area that we already have. So that's kind of what we're already doing. We already have the risk mapping done, continue to update it. And we've also identified through those maps, and then again, just on our own, we've identified our hazard zones and our greatest hazard areas. One of the other key issues they listed was the siting of structures or developments. For us, all of the new developments that we've had lately have occurred in what I would consider low hazard areas, right? Think about pine grass, Leavenworth Meadows. You have to, within this, they talk about it, right? It's a 29-page document, but there's a lot of factors that go into how we decide what that risk is. Is it interface, which everything in Chelan County is in the wildland urban interface, but there are levels to that. The next one being intermix, and that is what, when you have structures on a hillside, there's trees below them, trees above them, they're intermixed with the forest. We don't have very much intermix in the city itself, in the city proper. And we've been lucky that, and I have some pictures later on, kind of showing new development versus existing, and kind of the direction that we're going. But again, we don't suffer from a lot of topography issues because again, the cities, the stuff up on the slopes are usually outside of the city limits. When they have been somewhat affected by topography and space, I know there's a couple houses that sprinkler systems were required for. So that stuff is reviewed. We are looking at it and trying to make an educated decision using these factors. Another big one for them is structure density. Additional planning and structural hardening reduces risk. That's from the FEMA document. So the WUI code that the council adopted covers just the building itself, building materials, things like that. What the exterior can be made out of and, to make it more resilient against wildfire. But another thing that, again, we've kind of addressed with structural density is, Appendix D of the International Fire Code is applied to new subdivisions, right? When I get a site plan, of what, like the next phase of what pine grass is gonna look like, we're looking at street width, grade, materials that they're making it out of. It has to support 75,000 pounds. So there's pretty stringent, again, that's an optional appendix out of the IFC that the city's adopted, that covers the roadways, which, kind of ties right into ingress, egress, and all of those things. Can we get in, can people get in and out at the same time? Again, no, now they have to be 20 feet wide. Appendix C, which isn't fully adopted, I'll talk about that a little bit later on. That addresses water supply, which is another factor, that's taken into account when we have structure density. The development codes as they currently sit, we haven't adopted Appendix C, but in the development codes, they've taken a lot of stuff out of Appendix C and put them into the development codes so that in the city, we are using pretty much the strictest code that exists for fire hydrant spacing, distance from each other, distance from structures, and fire flow. So we also use the increased fire flow, and we don't take any of the exceptions. As far as access, egress, and evacuation planning, the CCSO handles the actual evacuation planning of we'll send people this way, contraflow, and all those type of things. And they can drills and meetings with all of us. You guys have been in some of those to ensure effective communication and teamwork. The roadway standards are what effectively cover road width, grade, surface, and emergency vehicle access. It covers inside and outside turning radius to make sure we can make the corners. Again, that width, and then to make sure that it's going to be a road that we can drive any apparatus down. The only one that's we have to kind of talk about, or we'll talk about a little bit, is the subdivision landscaping and vegetation management. That is a section of the IFC WUI code. We haven't adopted it. That code would only be applied to the green space or the basically non-residential private property. So there's currently no mechanism to enforce that on private property. That would be, that would be up to you guys if you wanted to try to take on. I'm not particularly interested in what kind of trees they can have in their yard, things like that. But that's what that looks like at a residential level. Currently, we will enact that section of the code. We have a couple of times for some commercial properties when we determine that whatever they've done with vegetation, usually it's they've let vegetation get out of control. Once it gets to a point, it either gets reported to us or we'll see it. I have declared that a fire hazard before, contacted the building owner and said you have to remove all of this and keep this area clear. And they did that. And that's kind of where we're at with vegetation management. Again, that would be a big step and not something that we're either against or for residential properties. We encourage people to do those things. We encourage people to be fire wise and think about that. But again, that's not something that we enforce. We don't do any enforcement of anything for residential properties for the fire district. The other one was protecting critical infrastructure. We have a pretty low exposure of our critical infrastructure in the city. There are some above ground power lines still throughout the city, but on new developments, so far they're putting everything in the ground. And that's the main concern, right? Is the critical infrastructure of power lines. And again, like the water treatment plant's not threatened, though the critical infrastructure of the city itself is falling to places and pretty well maintained. But again, most of the exposed infrastructure is existing already in legacy neighborhoods, and the PUD is planning over time to continue to update their older infrastructure. And eventually they'd like to put almost everything that they can underground. That's the safest for starting fires for them. Again, the other one, water sources for firefighting. The city enjoys a highly rated water supply system. It received an ISO 4 in our 2023 WSRB rating. So we're rated by the Washington State Ratings Bureau. And one of the factors they look at that's totally kind of autonomous from the fire department is the water system. It got a 4, which is actually one level better than the fire department got. So they weren't pulling us back at all. That just means that we have adequate flow, adequate mains. They're looking at kind of the whole infrastructure as a whole and seeing how much water we can get to any one spot, how much the capacity is at any one time. And that's out of 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being perfect. The city was a 4, so good job on first. And then currently they've adopted through writing the development codes, the majority of Appendix C. Which means we have some of the strictest requirements on location, distance, and flow rates of fire hydrants that is currently allowed by code. We would have to make up something on our own if we wanted to go beyond that. Density considerations. While an increase in density is obviously a concern, existing neighborhoods are more indicative of what a problem neighborhood might look like. And you'll see in the next slide that there's more available fuel, and there's a very little noticeable difference in setbacks. So reduced fuel along with structure hardening means that the new developments are actually most likely safer than their legacy counterparts. And we see here, this is the new development on Pinegrass, and then we see an existing, I believe that's Park Avenue right there, West Street up above. But you can see here, the density is extremely high, but what we have here that we don't have here is trees. And, you know, obviously everything that comes with brush and trees, and those type of things, whereas we're seeing in the new ones, they don't necessarily have the space and everyone's kind of surrounding their house now with non-combustibles because of the WUI code. And so we're just not seeing the same vegetation issues in the new developments. And that's just something that as we go back and look at this, to me, as a fire chief, I look at this and I'm like, okay, this is great. I get all the way around it, got great access. You know, yeah, they're close together, but not a lot of vegetation to deal with, not a lot of stuff to pick up spot fires. And the biggest thing for us is easily protected. So as we make the roads wider, as we make, you know, everybody follow the same codes, right? We end up with something that's a little bit easier to navigate. You know, you don't end up with like necessarily the same alleyways and stuff like that. So it's worked really well for us. I feel like we're doing a really good job. We're trying to be ahead of this. That FEMA document was released in June of last year. And I will just say nothing in it was a surprise to us. So most of the stuff we've kind of already been doing. And that's what kind of why I wanted to do this presentation. It will be available for those citizens because it's a nuanced issue. It's not a bad document. It's not a bad suggestion. You know, it was good feedback, and hopefully now I kind of understand that it is a great guideline, and we've kind of checked those boxes as we've gone and tried to get a system that's going to work best for Leavenworth and keep these new developments safe. And so far, I feel confident that everything we built, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, is very well mitigated. About as, you know, there's never any guarantees, but it's about as safe as you can build a neighborhood in this area. Again, the city itself, we don't have a topography issue because we sit down in a valley that's virtually flat. And again, when they build the new subdivisions, they're basically clear cutting it, and there aren't any trees, which is not necessarily aesthetically pleasing, but from a fire safety, wildfire standpoint, it doesn't get any better than that. So risk assessment that we do when we're making conditions for a new subdivision, the risk level from wildfire, right? We talked about that: steep slopes, proximity to forested land, access for apparatus, access to water. Also considered is the probable method of ignition, which is almost entirely timber cast in the city. We're not worried about a fire rolling through town because as you get down out of the forest, it's going to run out of fuel. But anyone that was here in '94, I wasn't. But I've heard tales that massive asphalt is falling down in the city, and that is going to be what we're worried about. You get high winds from a fire in the wrong direction, all of a sudden we're in the middle of an impasse. Occupancy and land use is another one that's considered during that risk assessment. Multifamily, or let's say they want to build a skilled nursing facility, they're going to encounter a lot more permit requirements, whether they're considered commercial or not, right? That land use can trigger things for us. Ingress, egress, again, covered by codes. But I know some of the larger developments, they trigger traffic studies and things like that. And then emergency response is ease of access, the type of apparatus access required, water supply, and even response distance. We don't see that much because our fire district isn't that large. But in a lot of jurisdictions that require sprinkler systems, if they're more than like 5 miles from the fire station. And again, the county does, but only on buildings or structures over 3,600 square feet. And then, so to recap, that's an excellent document that best practices for wildfire resilient subdivision. It's to assist both building and fire departments on those practices, but it's not a code. And most of the recommendations are extremely broad and they're nuanced by all of those factors, right? Many apply directly to the city, but many are not really intended or useful in an urban setting. That being the document was produced in June of 2023. It's an excellent resource, especially for remote underfunded departments that don't have the resources that we have. Again, there's a lot of money flowing in. We're doing an update on our CWPP this year. We're doing an update on the hazard mitigation plan. We have all the risk mapping. We have all of the, we're getting large grants from FEMA for fuels reduction. So because of Leavenworth risk, we've been able to kind of get all of those resources very quickly and very easily. Again, I think that's the second iteration of the CWPP in 2018. So we've had that document. I think the Chump State Coalition did the first one in 2008. So that's been around for a while. There's nothing in the document except vegetation management plans that wasn't being addressed by the current plan review process when it was made. So while again, useful guidelines, we've adopted the actual codes that IFC appendixes, the WUI code, which allow us to do that proper plan review and give those guidelines for both building and property owners, as well as community development. And then if anybody has any questions about it,
I had a question, Mike. So we're in the residential zone, we're now on condos, like on a R6. So depending on the size of the condo, you can have a regular house and a condo. You could have cottage housing, you can possibly have unit subdivision, okay? So as we add those in there, would there maybe have to be a code that says, okay, if you put that on your land and you up the density of structures within that R6, do we need to start stipulating taking out some trees? Because the trees are already there.
right.
Like the Shaw Park and West, and I can look on Ash, and ours it's all over town. The trees are there already. And if you put buildings in there under the trees, it looks like you're up in some issues consequential for, fire spread.
And that's where the vegetation management plan would come in and adopting that section of the WUI code. And again, that's up to you guys. That could do a very good job when they initially go in to permit or to switch the land use or however that works. The issue that kind of comes into play is enforcement after the fact. If they plant another tree there or something like that. Once, it's my understanding in community development, you guys would know better than me, that like once a residential building permit is done and closed out, that's pretty much it, right? It's not like a commercial occupancy where we're gonna, every year we do, every commercial occupancy gets a life safety inspection. We don't really have a mechanism to go back and see. It would be very useful if it was adopted, even if it only occurred when that land use change happened. It would be useful in that to give us the tool to say, yeah, you'll need to take these out to do this. So we have a lot more leeway on big commercial projects because
That's how it is.
we see it, but with just existing land being, kind of the land use being changed, it could be advantageous there. But again, that's basically the legislative thing that you guys would want to debate. And I mean, again, we don't feel it's a good idea. Vegetation management plans are great. But we've sort of been in the education and recommendation field, whereas this is getting into the requirement field. So that ultimately is up to, the conditions that you guys want to put on people, getting those permits and doing those things. So we're supportive of it either way.
Right.
Whatever you guys decide.
Well, I just think that if we're allowing denser building with existing foliage, canopy cover, I think it'd be something we should really consider before, if we're gonna put these things in. Part of the thing is an assessment's done, but it combines these trees on this lot with these more buildings. What has happened to the fire risk? I just think that's a valid thing to consider. As part to if you decide to put units, subdivision in, or not a subdivision, condo or whatever, this extra structure, that if you're building right next to trees and foliage and stuff, that's a viable consideration for the city to be able to protect itself.
I agree. Yeah.
Would this be like an amendment to the Woolley code though, sort of the recommendation would be?
Right, it's my understanding from what's in you know, when I looked at the city code online, that part of it wasn't adopted, because there's,
We have just recommendation,
yeah,
so we would modify that.
that's what, yeah, you would have to
Not required.
require a vegetation management plan.
And that would
And
be any build permit.
Correct. And the other backside of that for the residential properties is you could then, it would be much easier to say like, no, you can't plant arborvitae, a row of arborvitae to give yourself separation, you know?
Right.
It would give us some leeway there.
I mean, there's other stuff you can plant, you just don't need to plant that stuff, because that's,
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of, again, we're pretty well versed on the education and trying to get that information to people. And we would continue that, we would just, you know, have that mechanism to actually make sure that they do that.
right,
Instead of just giving them the book of fire resilient plants that hope for the best.
right. That's kind of what you ought to just hope, because that's all that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mike.
I have a tiny bit of time, but I don't know that I would get through every. What's that? See if I can share this. Sit it down. Sorry, guys. I can't probably do this. I don't know what's on. I'm trying to like hide my. There you go. Oh, this is kind of. Sorry, guys. I'm having technical difficulties. I wanted to walk through just like some of the big picture items. There's going to be more questions, and the reason we're doing this during a study session is to just open it up for discussion before I bring it to you for a hearing item. So this will come back to you before hearing. I'm following Selby's rule, but what is it? Three touches. So the reason we're looking at this, it was on the docket for this year for the Planning Commission to review. It is also a new state law requirement, RCW 58-17060 amended the code to require cities to adopt a unit lot subdivision code as part of this comprehensive plan update. This would allow division of a parent lot into separately owned unit lots, similar to condos, only in this case, the owner, they would own the land underneath the home instead of just the unit itself. Portions of the parent lot would be owned in common by an owners association. And again, it provides an alternative to condo ownership. This would allow for lots of varying sizes and shapes, including attached and detached housing, ADUs, and cottage housing. Basically, it's enabling developments that have multiple dwelling units on a single parent parcel to then be subdivided into individual lots, even though under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have the square footage required by code. We would apply all the site development standards to the parent parcel instead of the individual unit lot resulting from the subdivision. So we would have to look at this as a big picture of what is currently allowed on the lot. So let's say you have an RL6 lot. It allows for a single family and an ADU, so you could do a 2-unit, lot subdivision.
Right.
It doesn't allow any further density beyond that. Each lot only gets 1 unit, 1 dwelling unit. So it is looking at what's currently allowed in code. It just gives the flexibility of the lot size, so people can own the individual units. This would be processed as either a short subdivision or major subdivision, depending on the number of lots. So 9 lots or fewer is a short subdivision process that goes through an administrative approval, still a public notice, but just not a public hearing. A major subdivision, 10 lots or more, would go through a public comment period as well, and then a public hearing with the hearing examiner making that final decision. This would be applicable in all zoning districts, and if adopted by the county, would be permitted in the urban growth area as well. I'll kind of go through this quickly. I just hit on the unit lot subdivision being short or major subdivision. There would be strict standard application requirements, just like any other subdivision. And then I actually called the city of Spokane because they've adopted a similar code about what to do when it's vacant land and somebody wants to do a unit lot subdivision. And in this case, the application would need to include a site development plan of the proposed bulk build out. And then document compliance with all the standards, and then that would be referenced with the final plat. So that would be how it would be built out. That would be very detailed because you have to know square footages, so you can verify lot coverage, and you have to know the exact footprints of the units, so you can verify they meet the exterior setbacks. So there's a lot to that. I don't see that happening very often. They didn't see that happening very often, but we threw that in there as a just in case. Some of the criteria we're looking at is we look at parent parcel size. If the parent parcel is greater than 1 acre, somebody can't use this tool. So it only applies to smaller lots that are 1 acre or less. Otherwise, they could do a regular subdivision. We're looking at the parent parcel dimensional standards, not just the interior lot. So we still are looking at setbacks, lot size, lot coverage that's applicable to that big parent lot, the initial lot. I do have some pictures for you guys as well. And as I stated earlier, each unit lot only gets 1 dwelling unit. So as we're creating these lots, somebody can't buy one that has a unit on it and then put another unit on it. This is limited to individual unit lots. They are still applicable to, or subject to all the applicable requirements of our Title 13, 14, so that's water and utilities and our roads, Title 15 is building, Title 16, environmental, 17 is our subdivision, and 18 zoning. So those all still apply. And then again, the dimensional standards are subject to the parent parcel. Access is still important. I'm going to try to click through this very quickly. There can be common areas that are in the common ownership. Those would be designated as tracts on a short or major subdivision. Under the utilities section, it does say the public works director may require separate utility connections. To give that flexibility, it's a house with a small ADU and they originally had 1 shared connection. It's just giving some flexibility if there was, instead of requiring separate connections there. Reporting is the same as any other short plat. I'm going to skip that. So I had some examples to show you. I actually have some real world ones. This I clicked from online because I thought it was kind of helpful. So this shows that kind of a isometric view of some existing lots. The individual lots all are a house with an ADU detached. So in this example, they're doing a flag lot here, and so separating the primary from the ADU. Again, this was originally allowed by code, so it's just allowing the ADU to be sold separately with the land. The big difference between this and condos is the condos were individual units, all common ownership around. This, they actually get a small little piece of land with their home. The middle one is an example of no subdivision. So it's just somebody can live in the house and rent the ADU, or these would be both long-term rentals. And then this is an example of a corner lot where you have your primary dwelling and the ADU. There's no perfect scenario here. I'm just trying to give you a big picture, but I do have some examples of recent developments. This does not mean that this 100% could happen because there's so many other codes to look at with fire. Like some of these would have to meet fire separation requirements and access requirements. That I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it could look like. So if you're familiar, this is a 0 lot line single family residence with a detached ADU on each lot. So this is currently 2 lots. Here's the 0 lot line with the ADU and the 0 lot line with the ADU. So if, I know this is kind of hard to see, I apologize. If using unit lot subdivision, they were to separate the ADUs from the primary residences, we'd have a lot here, a lot here, a lot here, and a lot here. So this has already been reviewed for compliance with the zoning code and has been permitted. So we're looking at that big picture. It already meets the code requirements. Now we're just looking at those individual lots, and they don't have to meet the same setback requirements, from these internal lot lines, as long as they meet that fire separation requirement.
Meg, is this in the residential? That
Yeah.
picture?
Oh, I went too far.
Right around the corner from you.
Yeah, that's super.
I just skipped over my second.
Oh, really?
Haha, there we go. Okay, I know I'm short on time, so I will hurry up, but I just want to share a few more images. This is an example of a single family residence with a detached ADU that was on Stafford Street. Currently it's zoned RL6. It is just above 6,000 square feet and 2 units are allowed. So I grabbed the site plan real quick. So this is how the lot currently looks. And then on your right, you see how it would look if it was a unit lot subdivision. Again, there would be easements in place, there would be a lot of other things, and we have to look at fire separation and those kind of things, but just high level here.
Right.
Here's our favorite example. I threw it in here because everyone loves it so much. This is currently 2 lots, 4 units total, so each lot has a single family shared wall, single family unit with an attached ADU. Each individual parent parcel is about 3,600 square feet, give or take. So this is what it currently looks like. So you've got house ADU and house ADU. If you were to do a unit lot subdivision here, you'd have that line going down that firewall. Again, we would look at all the other code requirements. This would have to go through a subdivision. So public comment and fire's looking at it, BUD's looking at it, but it's the idea that it's not increasing the number of units that are already there. It's just allowing for somebody to own each individual dwelling unit. So you start with 4 units, we're ending with 4 units. And you couldn't add any more to those. Here's an example of cottage housing that doesn't exist right now. So this is a big picture, high level. I can't guarantee anything like this would ever fit on this lot, but I'm just showing you this as an example. So here's Orchard Street, vacant parcel. I went out and took this picture today because it's staked, because this is actually an approved 3-lot short plat. But if it were to be cottage housing, it could potentially house up to create 8 potential dwelling units. These would be very small with a shared courtyard area. I tried, didn't realize I'd use Christmas colors here, but it's red and green. Green is identifying like what a shared tract might look like for the access and parking that would be shared here. So this is, I tried to set this up, so road is here. And so these are the same, the road is on the right side. Just to get the idea, all the parking in the back and then the individual units here. So the idea is we would review this. So if we adopted cottage housing, there are specific standards where you have to have minimum courtyard, you have to have minimum setbacks from exterior property lines, and they still have to have that fire separation. So when we come in to do any unit lot lines here, they would then again have to make sure they're meeting all the codes that were applicable to that underlying zone. So again, the unit lot subdivision doesn't allow for more units than what's allowed by code. And I think that's a lot.
Nice job.
I had a question, Maggie.
Yes.
We used to have a ratio 35 to 65. You know, this much, you had to have
Over lot coverage?
lot coverage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we do have that still.
yeah. So if the state allows us to put 2 ADUs on an R6, you don't have that lot coverage ratio anymore, do you?
We do still have codes. I mean, we can't require anything more stringent than what we would for a single family. Those are things we're gonna dig into, but my understanding, and I may be wrong, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong, is that we still could have our underlying code, like somebody might, just because you can do it doesn't mean you have the availability to do it.
Right, you don't have to, I mean, it's allowed, it's just allowed.
It's an
It's
allowed.
got
use.
allowed
Yeah,
if your
yeah.
zoning would allow it. If you can get
If you
2
can get
units
it.
plus your parent unit and
Yeah.
still fit in the lot coverage, you can't not allow
Oh,
But if you've
But-
already tapped out your lot
it.
coverage.
Yeah,
then
if
you
you've
can't
already
do it.
tapped
Yeah.
it, you don't get an automatic
so we're
number.
not changing the lot
No,
coverage ratio?
no.
So
No,
if it's already at 35% and you're built at 34%, chances are you're not gonna have it.
Okay.
Second
Yeah.
unit off.
So that is being protected.
Mhm.
Right, okay. And it's like, I never can get which one is which. So the 65% is open ground or
It's just
Under roof.
anything not covered by a roof,
anything, 65% is what's not covered by roof? Okay,
correct? So it could be an open deck, it could be an open patio, it could be a driveway, that's not counted for lot coverage.
okay. Someday I'm gonna get that down. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions for me? I'm sorry I took more time than I needed.
All right.
Yeah, that was good.
It's not 5 minutes.
So one of the things you'll be asked to do tonight is just set the public hearing for it for down the road. So you just want to again, get this before you and introduce it again. It's a lot like the condo, only simpler. But you will be asked to set the public hearing for November 12th. Okay, we've got 5 minutes to take a break.
is a presentation from Tread on opportunity.
I haven't done this before. Do I stand here?
Yeah.
This will be fun. Actually see it.
You can.
It should be on, yeah.
It should work.
And it picks up for the people who are on Zoom.
Okay, here's a clicker. Okay, well, as it shows on the agenda,
You want us to start it?
sure.
There we go.
I am Hannah Wiener. I am the policy and planning manager for TRED. TRED is a nonprofit organization based in Wenatchee. And we seek to improve and enhance outdoor recreation opportunities in our service area of North Central Washington. Some of the projects that we have recently completed, by example, are a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan for Douglas County, which has never been done before. And we did a E5 pilot study for the Forest Service across several different districts of the Okanagan National Forest this summer. And then we produced this report that I'm summarizing for you today, opportunities for funding and management of outdoor recreation resources. So by way of background,
Oh. Sorry. Try it again.
there we go. By way of background, I come from a land management background and public access provider, and I found increasingly that it felt relatively straightforward to find funding for the acquisition of new open space or parkland and the development of new public access resources, but it was really difficult, challenging to find that dedicated and consistent funding that we need for the day-to-day management of those resources. I also found in conversations with peers and other land and recreation managers that that was a common challenge. So I was working for the Land Trust. I stepped away from the Chelan Douglas Land Trust. The Land Trust actually contracted with Fred to produce this report, which was just meant to explore what some of the funding opportunities and management structure opportunities are for us to make the operations and maintenance sustainable over the long term for our outdoor recreation resources, which, as we know, in this region are very important. So the goals of the project, which were finalized in the production support, and I think you have a link available to it. I have a copy, I believe, if you would like, and it's also on our website if you want it linked. Firstly, to convene regional stakeholders. So we talked with around 26 distinct land and recreation managers across North Central Washington, specifically Chelan and Douglas counties, as well as elected officials and at the state level, at the local level, and recreation user groups, and other recreation providers such as Leavenworth Country Sports Club, Chelan Douglas Land Trust, Plain Valley, ski trails, those that are not municipal agencies. We talked with them in order to try and identify the gaps in current capacity to kind of get a sense of what funding tools might match up to close those gaps. And then identifying those funding sources for outdoor recreation operations and management. And we turned outward for that. We talked to different entities across Washington state and across, other state lines, Colorado, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, California, to see what other places that are similar to us are doing to sustainably operate and manage their recreation resources. So in defining the need for capacity in those conversations, land and recreation managers, and also through a lot of review of planning documents and reports that had already come before us, they didn't just sit on a shelf. They may not be implemented, but I did go back and review them all and pull out some key and salient themes. So we kind of have two categories of capacity needs. One is for current operations and maintenance. So that's just meeting minimum basic land stewardship standards, basic maintenance for public safety and continued public access within the scope of management for current land manager. And the second one is kind of what I would call trying to meet demand, and it requires this capital investment. So we have a lot of outdoor recreation resources that are currently used, and they are developed by users, and they fall outside the jurisdiction of any sort of managing entity, or they are undermanaged. And they fell into kind of three categories. So access points to trail-based or water recreation sites, so parking lots and trailheads. Open space protection priorities, and there are two in our region that really rise to the top and are mentioned over and over again. That's the East Wenatchee Bench, which is an open space that is privately owned right now between Manager Heights and the airport in East Wenatchee and the Chelan Butte area. And then lastly, shared use pathways between communities and in Chelan and Douglas counties. And that is something that has come up over decades, but there's some recent movement on that with the Chelan Douglas pathways plan and that feasibility study that is currently in progress. So we looked to a bunch of different planning documents to help us identify these as well, including the Park and Rec Service Areas 2021 needs assessment, the river recreation plan that was developed for the county and the city of Leavenworth last year. Chelan County Public Works has a recreation access inventory that was developed, and that really looks at like what right-of-way areas are being used for public access and what are some of the issues associated with that. TRED's own Upper Wenatchee Valley Sustainable Trails Project, which looks at trying to enhance recreation that already exists around the upper valley of the Wenatchee Valley. And Lake Chelan Open Space Vision, among others. So we did our research to kind of come up with those. Okay, so there's a lot of text. Sorry about that. Very well on Zoom. But basically, these bullet points, I think that was a little wonky there. Summarize a large chunk of the report where we said, okay, we found, some general capacity needs. What are some of the funding tools available to us? And we looked at, public funding, we looked at philanthropy options, and we looked at as much as we could, what does it take to influence state legislation to benefit us locally? So with municipalities leveraging existing excise tax collections in Washington state, excise tax collections are most of the taxes we collect other than property tax to fund things. We, as a region, already collect real estate excise tax. According to Chelan County, Leavenworth collected, I think, around 175,000 in 2023. That has pretty strict uses that it can be used for. It can be used for operations and maintenance of parks and recreation facilities, but they have to be capital projects, and there's just not a lot of leeway there. Lodging tax, Leavenworth actually collects 5%. At a 5% lodging tax rate, as does Chelan. Wenatchee and East Wenatchee collect at 6%. The statutory limit right now is at 4%. So our region has taken advantage of lodging tax for a long time. We have a good history of utilizing that to fund things. Recreation special purpose districts. We have 3 different varieties that are allowed in Washington state. I'll talk a little bit more about those. We have all 3 in our region, but they're operating at a fairly small and limited scale. So there's an opportunity to increase the funding through the levy increase, or increasing the size of the recreation district as well. Develop dedicated philanthropic resources. So a voluntary give back program, they use this in a lot of other quote unquote mountain towns. This is where a business that is potentially like aligned with outdoor recreation takes a donation option to their customer at the transaction point, and asks them to make a donation on behalf of operating and maintaining resources. So that would be, would you like to add $1 to your night of lodging? Would you like to add 1% to your beer tab to help support local trails? So that's an option that TRED is actually looking into right now, and running a pilot program, and we've got a couple of businesses in Leavenworth that are really interested in that, as well as around other parts of Chelan. Partnerships, I think the best example I have of partnerships, in my experience, on a personal note, I tried to help get the Upper Valley Aquatic Boosters off the ground this year, and, that came out of wanting to see year-round swimming, which we'll get back to. And really, it became the priority of the group to make sure that the levy reauthorization passed. And we have every indication that having that friends group to support and advocate and educate our community around that really played a role in passing that levy at an increased rate. So friends groups can be very powerful, not only in doing volunteer work out on the ground, but also in making sure that your funding measures are successful. With the user fees, that came out as a recommendation of that river recreation management plan, so that's not a new concept for the council. Park impact fees are used widely in more urban areas. They can be used in rural areas, and those are something that are levied against residential development applications. And they, are there to ensure open space and parks and recreation resources keep pace with residential development and provide a certain level of service going forward. They're only for new things, though. You can't use them to cover existing operations and maintenance of existing parks, unless you're upgrading like certain people. And then some, exploring what we can as far as influencing state policy, including potentially exploring, an additional remittance of state share taxes to rural counties who get the overnight tax county level. Is there a case to be made that, Chelan County generates the 5th highest lodging tax revenue in the state behind all of the other urban areas of the state? Should we get a greater remittance of state shared sales tax because of the benefit we're providing to the state? A little bit of time on the special purpose districts, the recreation districts. So in gold, here is what we have in our area, the Parks and Rec service area. That's a property tax levy that gets reauthorized every 6 years. We passed that this year as a community, and that goes wholly toward the operating budget of the pool. Parks and Recreation District, the unincorporated community of Manson uses the Parks and Recreation District to provide a variety of park and recreation resources, including programming, a boat launch, a variety of parks and athletic fields. And that passes with really great support. And they actually pass theirs every 3 years. I'm not sure why, but they pass it with smooth sailing, good margin. Metropolitan Parks District is, I guess, like the experts say that it has greater fiscal flexibility than some of the other options. And that's Eastmont Metro Parks. That's been around since about 2004. It gets established with a permanent property tax funding levy. They pass that at 50 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. But unless you do a levy lid lift, that depreciates over time. So I think they're only getting like 16 cents on the $1,000 of assessed value now. So they're looking at doing a levy lid lift. And with that, the Department of Revenue actually recommends doing a levy lid lift almost on the same timeline as reauthorization of the 2 other types of recreation special purpose districts. So permanent levy funding just comes with its own challenges. Lastly, up here is a public facilities district. We also have one of those. That's what operates the town Toyota Center. That's sales tax based. So it can be very attractive, especially for voters. And public facilities has a pretty broad interpretation in the RCWs, and there are some, it definitely does say recreation public facilities. So there's the Asokan Aquatic Center that was developed and is now operated by PFD. And then Pasco, it sounds like, has a pretty ambitious project to get a recreation center developed and then would roll into operation of that using sales tax from PFD. That's 0.2% sales tax over the jurisdictional area. So opportunities for Leavenworth. You guys are doing, your comp plan update. You're just starting on that. You've had these community visioning sessions. I've had the good fortune of attending a couple of those, and I don't know what you guys heard. I know you're all there as listeners, but what I heard was people are very, they acknowledge the importance of tourism to our region. They also make the link between tourism and our natural resources and our natural landscapes, and they're very passionate and very concerned about making sure that the use of those resources is sustainable and the quality and education. The quality of our tourists depends on the education of them to be good users. And so, Leavenworth benefits greatly from a lot of recreation resources that are very close to the city, but not in the city footprint. So I think the question I would leave you with tonight is what role does the city have in providing for the development, operations, and maintenance of those resources that are outside the city, but clearly benefit the city. In the city of Wenatchee, they have been very successful in acquiring open space and opening up for public access and capitalizing on that and outside their UGA and in the unincorporated county. This, well, which you may not be able to read, is from that 2021 needs assessment. And residents in the Parks and Rec service area, which I would say, you know, that's slightly smaller than Cascade School District. Those are a lot of people that identify, like myself, as being from Leavenworth, even though we're not in Leavenworth. And the important things were multi-use trails and pathways, a pool for year-round use, and then other multi-use trails, maybe more of like a native surface. This picture is from Mountain Home. This is right outside the city of Leavenworth. Has a great view of the town, a great view of the icicle. It's currently this mishmash of private land with public access, private land without public access, Forest Service land with no capacity to manage, and a county road. So there's a lot of players in there. I don't know if we need other players in there, but we sure need to figure out collective management. I think another thing to think about, and there are conversations around this and more we hear, is there a need for something operating at a larger scale? So we have a Parks and Rec service area, and a Parks and Rec district, and a Metro Parks district, but they're all operating pretty in a very small scale. Do we need something that's bigger, broader, the size of the county, or do we need something that a Parks and Rec district that funds a county Parks and Rec department? And that is a question, because there's a lot of the user developed recreation resources that are already out there, already being used, that are not currently in the management scope of any one entity. And so thinking about how the city of Leavenworth would interface if there were a larger scale district that came online. The last picture there is just from our visitor guide from our chamber, also taken from Mountain Home, looking down on the city of Leavenworth. So we use and we benefit these resources that we currently don't have any operation and maintenance for. I'll just leave you with some next steps. We did an economic analysis of the impact of outdoor recreation in 2017. The state is updating theirs statewide. We need to update ours because we saw in the pandemic a just explosion of use of our outdoor recreation resources. The county is actually going to probably take this on. I think there's through the economic development department, they are looking at rolling out a study that will be about a year long that will take this into account, and it will also take into account learning more about users of recreation resources as beneficiaries. How do you map the benefits people get from having access to recreation so that they feel inclined to pay for, support that, the operation and maintenance of that. And then, you know, I think it was really challenging to figure out what was a capacity gap in deferred maintenance programs. So learning more about how we can consistently quantify that across the region, and then incubating capacity, volunteer capacity and support through like grants groups, partnerships, and philanthropy. So that is what I have. Happy to take questions if there's time. If not, you can find us at tread-tw.org, or you can email me. I can easily grab my email from staff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
So Hannah, what do you think? You sort of implicating that the city has kind of a responsibility to help maintain, like say, some of the trails outside the city, so they're well used or well protected, and they don't, you know, kind of that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think that's a question for the city to grapple with. Because there are, you know, when I read the river recreation management plan, that one really stood out to me because that is something that the city and the county work together on contracting for. And
Protecting the river.
and improving, yep. And that's just this mishmash of like, there's some sites that are, you know, owned by the fish hatchery that are access points. There's some sites that are owned by the city, but the city doesn't actually, in conversation with the Parks and Rec director, staff person,
doesn't have a lot of like management oversight or capacity to deal with some of those river recreation sites. So it really, I think it takes a lot of entities coming together, and there are, regional councils of government that can work together to help pool funding and direct it toward the management of those resources. Excuse me. Or it could be the city, deciding to do more. But if you're gonna do more, you have to have a revenue stream to do that, and that doesn't currently exist. So those user fees and user permits are something that really become very important. And then considering this state statute around recreation immunity, which is a whole other conversation that we can have another time, but start charging fees for recreation, then you lose protection from the state recreation immunity statute from being sued for someone for jury. So there are pluses and minuses. Other counties charge parking fees, so it's not, there are ways to work with that. So I think it's a question of what the city can do as you go through your comp plan, whether you work with other entities that already exist, or support the existence of a new entity, or take some of that stuff on as an individual entity or organization. Partnerships seem to be the most efficient way to get things done.
Have you talked to other city councils?
I haven't met with other city councils since the report's been finished yet.
Okay,
I've had one-on-one meetings with the mayor and the city administrator in Wenatchee, and the port district, the QD.
I just wondering what response you might have, if you had, like with Kashmir or Chelan or stuff like that.
Yeah, I've talked with them in the development of the report, and Kashmir they're very supportive of outdoor recreation, but they also don't have revenue streams.
This, built, yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Our next is a public hearing on the 9646 Marson Drive annexation. And again, public hearing is, if you'd like to make comment, we'd ask you to come up and state your name and address into the microphone. The comments addressed to city council and relevant to that topic of annexation. And it's not a time to get questions answered, it's just a time to make public comments. So I would call this public hearing to order at 7:29 and ask Maggie for a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is annexation of property at 9646 Marson Drive. I'll provide a brief overview, and then the applicant is here to provide testimony. And you have heard this multiple times, but I'll go through the basics. This is property that's approximately 0.52 acres in size. It's adjacent to the Mine Street right of way, and this annexation would also include that portion of Mine Street right of way that is in the county, contiguous to the city limits and within the urban growth area. During the September 10th regular meeting with the council considered Gustavo Hoyos's letter of intent for annexation, and the council agreed to consider that annexation under specific assumptions. And then on September 13th, Mr. Hoyos signed a petition for annexation, and that request was then forwarded to the Chelan County Assessor's Office for determination of sufficiency. And that was granted on September 27th of 2024. That notice of annexation was then posted on the property in 3 locations and the city hall boards. The purpose of this annexation is to encourage multifamily development using available city services for water and sewer. And the proposed annexation has been determined consistent with the Growth Management Act and with city plans for future growth and development. Again, as stated, the ordinance will come later. And I am available for any questions.
All right, would we have some that would like to speak?
Yes, yeah, right. So that here is.
Yeah, come on
there.
there. State name and address.
Yes. My full name is Gustavo Rafael Hoyos Jimenez. I go by Gustavo Hoyos to make it more easy for everyone. Sorry, this is my first time here. I don't know if I'm over this, hopefully it's not. So mainly I'm building this house for my mom.
very much they're getting into the golden age. They have been living on a mobile home the entire time they have been here. So it's time for them to get a nice, decent house for them. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. So get a house for them, get some duplex at the back so we can sustain the payments for the mortgage on that end. So that's my main goal. Obviously, we need to have that's gonna be contributing obviously to the water and sewer payments, property taxes, all that good stuff. So hopefully that also helps to the city as well. I know the city has been very helpful on everything. I know they have been, be very diligent on helping me on this getting through. So I appreciate that a lot. So thank you. I'm here to contribute, but also to help out. So if there's something else that needs to be done, please let me know. We only have to address that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Sure, come on.
I'm Ann Fink. I reside at 201 Pine Street. And I am Mr. Hoyus's neighbor, I guess. We're a little distance away. But my comment is that by annexing the drive, that 15-foot right of way, well, there are maintenance needs on that. And I don't know how those would be addressed. And possible additional traffic would impact that little lane. Those are my concerns. I'd like to see those addressed somehow in the permitting process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
David Ormeyer with Ordinances and Associates out of Comanche. I'm Mr. Orris's agent. Just so staff's been really helpful. I really haven't had to do too much except write the first memo and they've taken everything else over. So that's the good part. What I did want to talk about is just that as he adds to, at least some affordable housing with the 2 duplexes, which would help out in this community quite a bit. We would expect that with traffic, anything that he would have to improve would go through those improvement process on 2 sides. So it would help on 2 streets, both on mine and Marson. So it would help on both sides. And then his advantage, hopefully bringing in, is that these are older buildings, so it'll improve the environment of the town, right? You move them an older mobile home and changing out an older house, right? It's a house. So that would also be helpful. Plus you get a little bit of revenue from the water and from the taxes, even though it kind of makes the first cut. But you do get a little bit. So those are your advantages. Mostly I am here to just answer questions that the council may have.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:35. And we will then move on. That will come up again. As we've said, it won't be passed tonight. We're submitting it to design review and then it will come back to us. There'll be a chance for further conversation at that time.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So with the lady's concerns, where does that get covered or talked about or fixed?
In development,
After
the annexation is not a permit per se. So when there's a development permit is when that would all those questions get addressed. This is just bringing the property into the city. Is what the annexation is. It's not, it doesn't, they gave us some intention of what they want to do, but that's not really part of what we're approving. We're approving just bringing that lot into the city. But we're not even doing that tonight. This was just a public hearing to get the comments.
But that will be, the question
That'll be addressed in, when there's an application for actual building, and that gets addressed. All of those issues get addressed in that process.
All of the issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if I'm hearing Sharon's concern or question correctly, it's getting the cart before the horse we can't make satisfying her concerns a condition of the annexation. That's the question. If I'm hearing Sharon correctly, I think what you're saying is, can you address those concerns as part of the annexation? And you're saying that's getting the cart before the horse.
Yeah. I'm saying that annexation isn't development.
Right.
So,
I'm
and
saying that
when
those
the
things will be looked at.
development, that's when all of those things about traffic, about impacts, about
Okay.
road improvements, all of that gets handled in a permitting process, the development. This is just about bringing it into the city. That's what this is.
Okay.
So those get answered in a different spot.
But they do get answered.
Yes,
Okay.
like they would with any development, right? But
So Carl, my thing was that in a hearing, I understand you can't ask questions.
no, it's just to take public comments.
So
We'll have this come back to you for an ordinance to actually choose, and that, at that time, there'll be other opportunities for discussion
okay,
on it.
so that's
This
the
is just to
question.
get public hearing,
Okay,
public comments, and then it will come back in an ordinance at a later time.
my issue was that I wasn't sure exactly what Gustavo was gonna do with that, so those are my questions, but I can wait till I have a chance for that.
Well, and again, that's
It's not
that's the development questions aren't about whether it's annexed or not, just so that you're clear. He could tell you what his plan is, and that could change.
Mhm.
That's
Andy doesn't
not
have to
what,
tell us anything.
and he
He
doesn't
can
have
just
to
request
tell
the
us, right?
annexation.
No.
We don't need to
This
talk about future development
Right.
during an annexation process.
Right. So just to be clear, right, that we have to, yeah, keep the cart before the horse or whatever, but we just have to deal with the things that we're dealing with. And this is an annexation question, not a development question.
So is there a place for those questions to come back?
Those get handled by,
Not
once
by us.
it's brought in, it gets handled by your planning group. It's not a
Guys,
council process, okay? All right, we will move on. Before we do that, though, we've got three that I'm gonna guess are students here. Either that or you're really fooling us. But I wanna have you tell us your name and maybe a little bit about what you're here for and what your plan is, or anything you want to share. Go ahead.
So we're all students at Cascade High School. And we
Surprise.
and a part of our civics class, we have to attend 2 city council meetings. So we're just here taking notes. Yeah. I don't think any of us have ever been to a city council meeting, so we're just kind of seeing how it all works.
Seeing how it works. I hope you learn something.
Hope we will.
I want to have you come up. I got a pin for you. Come on in forward here.
and you have to wear it for the next week.
Hey, they got dinner too.
So, and your name is?
Kaden Peterson.
Hey. Yeah,
Thank you.
good.
Jonas.
Yeah, good. Welcome. There you go. Yeah,
Melvin, what's up now?
all right.
Nice to meet you.
Well, enjoy. This is exciting stuff.
Yes.
All right. We're gonna go into our resolutions, ordinances, and just a reminder that as we do this, if you're here to make comments, we ask to be respectful of each other. We acknowledge it's okay to disagree on things. Prior to making comments, you must be recognized by the chair. Please address the council as a whole and not individuals. Please step forward and state name and address and keep your comments focused on the topic that's being discussed. And our first action item is Resolution 17, 2024. And this is a potential resolution in opposition to Initiative 2117 that would repeal the Climate Commitment Act. And I did supply you all with a kind of background in what the Climate Commitment Act generates in terms of funding and what it's spent on. This came out of a meeting I went to with the Washington Association of Cities. And a number of cities are concerned about the impacts to the state budget, which also impacts city budgets. So, got questions or anybody have any interest?
Well, I think as a city council, and a mountain town, but not just because we're a mountain town, but I think we definitely have a role to play in knowing what this carbon tax credit does, what it does for us, and that to lose this would be a significant loss for the city and for our community. So I think this is well worth a discussion, and that as for myself, I would definitely vote for the resolution to keep this Climate Commitment Act in place.
Well, why don't you go ahead and just move it and see if we get a second, and then you can all discuss it.
Okay, I can do that. Let me just dial this up. So the Leavenworth City Council moves to approve Resolution 17, 2024. Council opposition to I-2117 to repeal the Climate Commitment Act.
Second.
Moved by Zeke, seconded by Shane. Now, other comments, questions, concerns? Anybody in the audience want to make comment? You want to come forward and state your name?
Ron Duncan, 224 Cascade Street. Is this initiative the one that is the carbon tax?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a hidden tax on gas that inordinately affects the poor. The city it wants to take the position rather than leave that is to the people. Is that what I'm thinking? Anyway, I'm thinking that perhaps that should be something that would be left up to the people, because the title is really nice. But I think the effect inordinately affects people at the gas pump, and it's not included in the tax, the gas tax that you see at the pump. It's just a hidden tax that we pay in Washington State that isn't in other states. And so I'm not sure that's something the city council would take a position on, even though they're getting a benefit from.
Yeah, it is a potential for the city to take a position, but you're right, it is up to the people. It's taking a position on a people's initiative. And like I said, many cities are doing it because they do realize it does impact. And there is opposition and there is pro this initiative. And we're just discussing whether we should be opposed to it because of its impact negatively. Again, carbon credits and all of that is, you're going to see that as a much more progressive. There's going to be more and more states doing it simply because it's a way to help wean ourselves into a new way of determining where we're going to get our energy and how we're going to move forward as a culture, as climate change is definitely impacting all of us. So, but you're right, it is taking a stand and it will ultimately be decided by the people. We understand that.
Thank you for hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comments?
Do you know roughly what amount of funding the city generally gets from the CAA revenues on an annual basis towards local transportation projects?
No, it's just a matter of leaving a hole in that would get a hard time to fill in terms of where that gets and how that gets spent out, but I know that there are specific programs that we can apply for. This is all fairly new. Funding stream, it was what, 21? But it's already generated, a couple $2 billion. So it's, you put that hole in the state's budget. And I know, for instance, one of the things we've talked about is going after transportation funding to punch the road all the way through Adamstrasse. And in reality, in our conversations with our representatives, it's like if this initiative goes through, there will be no new dollars going into transportation other than what's already pre-committed. So it will impact our ability to draw something like that. So
I'm uncertain how there is a motor vehicle fuel tax in the state of Washington. The city gets about $46,000 a year from that tax. I have no idea how this particular bill affects this motor vehicle fuel tax, however.
Right.
It's possible, the fuel tax has been in play well before this climate change came into play. But my thought on it is, if it does get repealed, the state's going to cut, and where are they going to cut? They're going to cut their street grant funding programs such as TIB, which is what we get a lot.
Yeah.
of money from.
Isn't that what funded the scrub seal?
Both of these
All
projects,
that, right, yeah.
90% on both were covered by the state,
Right.
not our community.
And the bigger applications we put in, that are projects covered by the fund, are more multimodal. So we have put in, and that's my understanding of that program is primarily that's trying to fund is a reduction in vehicles on the roadway. And instead multimodal transportation or active transportation, I guess is the better term. Where we're looking at people who use bikes and walking. Sorts of things. But as far as actual dollars in that program that I'm aware of, we don't have any of this.
Plus, if this passes, then the state doesn't have any way to initiate any kind of control on polluters. I mean, like, this is at least a cap and trade thing where there's some consequences. And your largest this is some kind of deterrence to that, and also a fundraiser, whereas if this is gone, you don't even have any deterrent for better ecological, environmental safe practices. So there's like a huge cascade of effect here if this initiative passes, which I see as all negative.
Can I raise a larger philosophical concern?
Sure.
This has nothing to do with the merits of the two resolutions that are in front of us and how I feel about a pro or con. We're elected to represent everyone in Leavenworth, and we are a diverse population with a number of different perspectives and viewpoints. I feel uncomfortable casting a vote, having our city ostensibly have the look that we're putting our thumb on the scale one way or the other on how we feel about a particular thing, when I guess I'm putting myself in the position of someone, if I lived in a city where I knew the political bent was different from how I felt, and knowing that the council passed something in favor of something. I just don't think, I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm fumbling around for the best words for it, but philosophically, I wouldn't like it if I lived in a community where my political beliefs were different than whomever might be on the majority of the council. It would be one thing if we were voting on something that materially and demonstrably affected something on our balance sheet in this town. And the TIV example, though, is a great example, but does it set a precedent where we're going to put our thumb on the scale for any and all, voter initiatives that are out there on the ballot? Are we going to give our endorsement sheet every election cycle? Like, I feel like it opens a Pandora's box. Where we're essentially endorsing positions.
Right.
And I don't feel comfortable with that.
Right.
No matter how I feel about these personally.
Right. And that is, a valid perspective. The same time, the reason I think it's worth talking about is because this does deal with dollars, and it's state dollars, and it's taking away from a state that we rely on for dollars as well. So it is a general impact. And you say, that people are going to side, and there are going to be people, we're constantly making decisions and taking votes that don't have 100% approval from even our own constituents. I mean, that's the nature of the political game in some sense. But when you say that, politics and stuff, I was just at an AWC, and this crosses the cities that were coming out against this repeal, weren't all blue cities. There were many small towns that depend on those dollars that are saying they're taking a stand as well. So it's not a certain political spectrum that's doing this. It's those who recognize the impacts that real impacts that it could be for their cities, leaving a hole. And this is one of them. We're going to talk about another one that impacts schools. And again, there's definitely arguments for and against doing it, but I don't think the argument that we're putting our thumb in is any more valid than any time we put our thumb in by enacting legislation that not everybody's going to agree with. But if we're doing it for the good of the city, and if you can't do it in good conscience for what you think is in the best interest of the city, then no.
I don't think that that's a fair comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm equally uncomfortable with this resolution in front of us as this next one that will be coming before us. Because I think this goes beyond the bounds of the city limits and our responsibilities as city council members. I think that something more appropriate would be having a conversation about this in the community and talking about the pros and cons of this type of initiative and how it will impact our local community. But I don't think that it's our job to establish resolutions for or against state initiatives. That's up to the voting public, and our job, I believe, more locally is to educate and not take a stance when we're not taking the community along in that conversation.
I think something that might be more helpful for our community, from following what Ann was saying, is an education kit. And I understand that regardless of what happens with the Climate Commitment Act, the state is looking at a pretty intense budget shortfall outside of this, from what I understand, in the next legislative session. So it might be more helpful in this election cycle to do an education campaign talking about, if this passes, if this is repealed, what is on the table for us as a community? Will our TIB funds be gone? Will we have, just like what you said it would be on the school district to educate regarding the capital gains taxes, but I could see a case for the city educating the public as to what's in it for you to keep this tax in play.
Mhm.
But just on its face, an endorsement sheet, I feel like it may do more harm than good if people aren't aware of the full context behind why we vote the way we vote. I'm not entirely comfortable with the optics on it.
Well, you know,
It
one
may
of the
be,
things you're doing is having this discussion is doing that education. I mean, this is all public, right, process that we're engaged in. And that's part of that, you know, one of the things that, you know, like I said, I put it out there and said, vote it up or vote it down, but it's the timing of it is such that we're gonna get our ballots real soon, right? So this is like, just a good discussion to have.
yeah.
And think about, you know, what
I'm
those.
not opposed to having the conversation and educating the community on what it would mean to our community if this gets repealed or doesn't get repealed. I think all of that is a really great path. I'm just uncomfortable with the resolution.
I guess I would say, I can see where you're coming from on Clint and Ann on the comfortability of it. I think that there's I guess I see our job as city council is overall, main role of the city council, to me, is the preservation of the community. Somewhere, one or whatever, how you put codes you put in, what you allow in, what you don't allow in, initiatives you have. And I think that this initiative, why I made that move was that because I thought about this a lot. Are we stepping out too far? Or do we need to step out? And from my perspective, for this kind of initiative, what it's dealing with and what the climate change is real. I mean, it's real as a wildfire threat, okay? So to just not take a stand on this, well, wouldn't put it that way, but I think this is something that I don't see us putting our thumb on it, but we're just saying we support this. You're going to vote with the way you want, but I think it's going to have impacts, and I think it's important to yeah. So that's why I think we would have a position on it, because it is a real issue, and if this initiative is gone, where is the oversight of the polluters in the state?
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I don't, I just.
Yeah, so
I
anyways,
disagree
I guess,
with the process.
yes, so that's why I feel like I would vote for this pass on myself, just for those reasons. But I think even more so would be a discussion of these issues, so people, I wish if we could get them to come out for it. Yeah. Talk about it, because I think it's taxes, and like Ron mentioned, it's part of, it is on the gas tax. It does affect the price of gas. So I think that's why people are wondering, you know, have reservations. But like, you can't make this happen without some cost to all of us. And so I think both things need to happen, discussion and our support of this thing. Both of them are both critical, and I'd definitely support both issues, having that discussion. You know, I mean, like, this is where our world is right now. And we need to be engaged with it, and hopefully promote community members to engage with it also, because it's not going away. It's cascading on us. So that's what I'm thinking.
Any other discussion?
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard.
Yeah.
Because we can't lose that. But there again, too bad that this hadn't come up at an earlier date.
Right.
Where the community could have read things in the Echo and maybe the Wenatchee World or what have you. And
There's still time. We don't have
been
the
able
ballots out yet.
to, when is it? When is all that going on?
The ballots will come in the mail in a week or so.
In a week.
Yes.
So engagement night, we have engagement night yet coming up.
29th.
Yeah, right. But the ballots will be out before then.
Okay, well, at least, I mean, the people aren't gonna
Fill
vote.
them out the last.
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
days, so-
yeah, the last couple of days. Hold off. Well, let's go ahead. Let's just put it to a vote. You put it on the floor. Let's. take a
Okay.
vote. All those in favor of this motion that would be in opposition to repeal the Climate Commitment Act, let me see your hands.
Under protest.
Protest.
We got 4 opposed. And we've got 1. 4 to 1. And opposing. That one passes. The next one, this will be just another struggle here. Council opposition to I-2109 to repeal the capital gains taxes. Again, you've seen the review of that. This one is dedicated to education and that which comes in above 500,000, we're going to the education, the school building fund. Again, this is a capital gains on those making more than 250,000 in a year on capital gains, and it excludes farms, it excludes several areas of capital gains, so that it just gets, again, a very small percentage. It was appealed in a lawsuit to say that this was actually an income tax, but our state Supreme Court upheld it as something other than a income tax, since it is just on capital gains. Again, this would again put another hole in school budgets as well. I would just comment that we are known to have one of the most regressive tax systems in the United States because of our reliance on sales tax that hits the lowest income the hardest. This is the one thing that can do something to counter that in taxing the highest earners in our state. So. Questions, comments?
Our school district, because our property taxes are so high, when we build a new school, we don't get any money from the state. Is that right?
I understand, I don't keep up with that. I was on the school board at one time. Every school district got a portion, even if they did ask a levy or a bond at that time. There was still some state dollars involved at that time, but that's been a long time ago that I was on. But
That's what I understand anyway.
is that we don't.
There's just a few communities in the state whose property values are so high that they don't get help with passing school bonds.
Yeah. Well, most of this isn't building related, but most of this is for early childhood education and such too. So it's up to the first 500 million.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would suggest that we let this one die with no motion, and here's my thought process behind it. I voted for the last resolution because if the repeal passed, it would have material and definite impacts for the city of Leavenworth and our residents. While I do not debate the merits and the feeling and the intent behind this resolution, last I saw, I did not see any resolutions at the school board about repealing the Climate Commitment Act. It does involve our school districts, but I feel like this opens up the door. We are literally creating an endorsement guide for our voters. Once we take this path into this area, it is not a comment on the merits of it and the feeling behind it. And I feel like once this goes to a vote, not only are we voting it down, almost implies that we're talking about the merits of what's on the ballot. It gets complicated once it's on there. If this dies without a motion, then we don't have to weigh in on it, which frankly, I'm not sure is our place to do in this particular instance. Not only for this particular resolution, but more for the precedent that it sets. And if in 5 or 10 or 15 years, there's a council that is seated here that does not align with the values that I have, I would appreciate it if they did not give a voter's guide that did not align with the way that I felt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, has the council ever had to take this position on any?
I don't think we've ever
before?
chosen to take positions like
No.
this
Okay.
on items that are on the ballot. No.
Okay. So this is uncharted territory for us.
This feels like a first, at least in my time on the
Okay.
council.
Sharon, can you comment? Do you know? Have you ever had to?
I'm not remembering ever having to do this.
Okay.
If this resolution, let's see, is there? Oh, I don't know. Let's look at it something else. Okay, what do we lose if this passes? If we're being asked to repeal,
If the state repeals the capital gains, we specifically as a city, this isn't directed at us. It would be this, again, the state's early childhood education and educational would be down roughly 500 million.
why is anybody doing this? I mean, why is anybody coming up with this
To repeal it,
to take all that money away from the kids?
it was done by, you can look at who's behind it. It's one man basically that was behind all of these initiatives that's,
To repeal them?
yeah, very, very wealthy. No, he moved in state.
Moved in state, but he came from California.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a very wealthy person.
But you can't say their name?
I mean, I don't, it was Haywood, I think is the
I can't
last
think of
name, but that's not material.
Yeah,
It'll probably be in the voting pamphlet.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, actually, everybody's gonna get a vote on this,
right.
Yeah.
so. No, you just let the people decide.
Yeah, but I understand what Clint's saying though, by us choosing one way or another.
Right.
Right.
Shane, to answer your question, I don't recall a specific state initiative that we have done a resolution in support of or against. We have done some in the past for climate change or resiliency, maybe with the Mountain Pact. And we were partnered with them.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I was against it.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but you brought these forward because AWC.
Many, they do not take a position, but they do give the fact sheets. And again, allow their cities, but like I said, at the meeting, there was a meeting of throughout the state of the board of AWC. And like I said, there were many communities addressing this at their city council. And I came back and thought it would be a good discussion to have with, on these.
I support the discussion and education component. I don't think it's appropriate for the city council to take a position on state initiatives that are going to the people for a vote. I think that sends a very inappropriate message to our community.
And
I would like this one to just die.
well,
Not
if
bring
no one's
it
gonna,
forward.
if no one's gonna put it forward, then it does that. So somebody feels strongly they would want to put it forward, they can move it. Otherwise, we'll move on.
I think that, what we don't want to miss here is, I think that letting this die is probably the best move, but I wouldn't want to go past this evening without promoting some kind of discussion on these two issues, but we've had one. Because this will have a huge impact on schools, which affects us all. And so I think it's definitely worth a discussion of what results when they lose that funding. Because that's also our community.
Well, I feel like it's a yes and. I mean, if this passes, the repeal of the capital gains taxes, not only will it hurt education, but it will be incredibly regressive in the way that it will hurt education, and that the wealthiest school districts, the ones with the most resources, will come out fine on this. The ones that will hurt the most, the ones who will be hurt the most will be the kids that have least recourse to make it up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm still not comfortable putting our thumb on the scale.
Right.
Right. I think that's a valid point on this one. I had some conversations with a few folks, and actually the way this is with one of the candidates, and he identified the fact that our tax system in the state of Washington is actually more regressive than Idaho. Reason being that we tax our higher income folks a less percentage, and the folks and they have a higher tax for those folks. And our lower end folks, because of the sales tax and how that works, they have pay up more out of their income than the low income folks in Idaho.
Takes a greater share of their income.
We're in 8 million, we're almost 8 million in Washington State. I was looking up the stats just because of all this, and Idaho has 1 million as far as residents I'm talking about. But so these are important issues, and it's just like you can't just say, gosh, I hope this passes. Not hope that we keep this tax in place is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Because of all the good that it accomplishes. But I have to say that in this particular role, I don't see us being able to come out with a stand.
Yeah,
But it's critically important. I mean, don't kid yourself. Early childhood education is one of the most important things we do as a community and as a state.
Yeah.
and the reality is that there's an awful good chance that this will be repealed simply because anytime a tax measure comes in the ballot, we tend to go
Right.
against it, even though it won't impact us, even though it doesn't charge us. We'll just say it's a tax and therefore we'll vote it down. To me, it's still important to try to get ourselves less regressive than we are. Like you said, Idaho's has a more progressive tax simply because they do have an income tax as well as a sales tax.
Right.
So, for the few that don't have some kind of income tax, this is the closest we have to get some leveling out. And I like you, I think it's very important that we take steps to try to correct we'll probably never get an income tax, although a good Republican friend of mine said, why you guys are in control, you Democrats, why don't you get this done? You're the ones that have the power, but it's not that simple. But anyway, we'll let it die, but it is, I agree, with you, Zeke. I personally don't think it's outside the scope of what our concerns should be. I think we have to be a part of a broader community as well as the Leavenworth community, but I defer to the council and we will move on. Action item number 12 is Resolution 19, 2024 to set a public hearing for the 13th Street vacation that we have presented at our last meeting. Maggie.
I don't have a lot to add. We discussed this our last meeting. I answer any questions right now, but this is just to set the public hearing, to follow the process.
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve resolution 19/2024 to set a public hearing for the 13th Street vacation on November 12th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Shane. Any other questions?
Yeah, Maggie, I was gonna ask on, this is the one down on 13th Street. So that trail, this is the, Jordan's, property, right?
Correct.
What happens, that trail is a Eagle Scout project by Nick, Howard, right? So is that trail gonna stay intact?
Yes. I mean, if this were, if it were to move through, it would be similar to the easement we have behind City Hall here where we vacated Woodward, but we still have the access. There would be an easement maintained through there before the.
Okay, because I didn't want to see that trail just somehow wiped out.
Right.
Because that is city land, I take it, that we're vacating. Okay. Because that was an important project and I just don't want that, I don't want to lose that Eagle Scout project, so, okay.
Yeah, Andrea was kind enough to go down there with me today so that I could understand exactly what was going on. And the trail is not being touched.
Okay.
Because I, saw Nick's thing there too and everything. So at least I understand what's going on down there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as proposed, a portion of that trail would be, they are requesting a portion of the annexed. Or not annexed, sorry, vacated, become part of the property. But that'll be part of the packet all put together for you, so it's very clear.
Okay.
What they're proposing and.
So access is not going to be restricted, all that, it's all intact. Okay, because that was a big deal. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So all those in favor of setting this public hearing, let me see your hands. And it passes unanimously. Ordinance 1698, the quarterly budget amendment, Chantel.
Thank you, Mayor Fuller. Council, as noted in your packet, majority of this amendment includes your actions over the last quarter, including the biggest portion of it is the car wash property purchase. In addition, there are several items, and I'm just going to read this for the public. Staff requested items, an asbestos abatement grant for Osborne, which Administrator Selby mentioned earlier for you. Accepting a WCIA insurance mitigation grant for a street grinder, which is going to assist our parks and streets departments with mitigating trips and falls on bumps in the concrete. Utilizing previously received TIB street grant funds that were previously dedicated for Ordinance Street, but are now being redirected for use on the commercial street railing project. Those funds were already received by the city, so now we're doing the expense of those. And incorporating the tax on the contract for the Front Street restrooms that was also previously approved, but the motion did not include the tax at that time. I would entertain any questions if you had it.
Yeah, so the TIB funds for the Orchard Street, as I understood, I just wanted a clarification. Most of that was going to go over to the central construction, right?
The grant funds is actually only $75,000, and it was for the sidewalk portion only of that. We did not acquire the actual TIB funding for the street itself.
Okay.
And that's where the project started to go sideways. And then Tom was working on reallocating that 75,000 to Central.
We did get it reallocated to central, but then looking at it, knowing that the Osborne property is going to be reevaluated in the future, we talked with TIB about it and they thought it was best used in another location. And so that's why we reallocated those funds now down to Commercial Street. That's a location where we're right alongside the river. It's between 3rd and 8th. So right across from Blackbird Island down there.
Oh, that stretch before you get to the golf course? Whatever.
Yeah, so there's a portion that has handrail in that location, but a decent stretch that doesn't. And so right now there is a risk there, both from vehicles, pedestrians, and then also our operators who maintain that sidewalk in the winter. of actually leaving the sidewalk and rolling into the river. We've had some near misses there. So this is a way that we can reallocate those funds to be used in that location.
So so instead of going to central, it's gonna go to the railing on commercial.
Correct.
Exactly.
And you're right, we actually did like formally move those over to central and then move them once again.
Okay,
So both are true.
good enough.
Yeah, if you walk down there, it's pretty scary that there's that section that doesn't have anything that would keep people from going over.
Can you explain to me the parts of a major portion of this total, including the car wash property purchase?
Mhm.
Am I really reading in the wrong place?
What was the question?
What part of that?
Is
do
this
you want me to
ordinance
explain?
1698?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the car wash
Yes.
property?
Well, what are we saying with that in here?
So you guys made the motion to buy the property, but we never discussed who was paying for it, which funds.
Mhm.
And so that is outlined within this amendment. Selby and I got together with Attorney Grafstruck to look at it from a legal perspective. Lodging tax was rolled out because of many reasons,
Hmm.
including the auditor recommended avoiding it.
Okay.
So we are charging various funds. Two big factors. One, ability to pay for it from the fund, so the fund's health. And then two, what is the uses being identified for the entire public works land that is in that entire location. So you have streets, you have parks, which is general fund for parks. General fund in general can, of course, purchase whatever.
Sewer.
Sorry, I have these all tagged.
Garbage.
Garbage, small portion. Water, small portion. Water's portion was small specifically because of the health of the fund. Stewart took on a larger piece of the purchase because we will be retaining and taking more of our land from the shop, the street crude area for the expansion of wastewater in the future. Stormwater took a very small amount. And then parking, because parking did not have any vested interest in the property prior, the existing or the new, they did take a large chunk of the purchase as well.
Cause that's where we're setting them up, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
Yeah, parking will be moving into the car wash.
what I
Yes.
thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions?
Leavenworth City Council moves to adopt ordinance 1698 quarterly budget amendment.
Second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Zeke. Any other questions? Darren, any other questions?
No.
Oh, okay. All those in favor, let me see your hands. Opposed?
I'm at the same.
Oh, good. You get to abstain. One abstention, Sharon. Action 14, surplus of the snow machine. Selby.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, you are being asked to surplus a 2014 SMI snow machine that was originally purchased with the intention of making snow at Front Street Park in the years that we didn't have a lot of snow. I've learned that it was kind of problematic utilizing it. Our temperatures aren't stable enough. It made a big mess everywhere. And to be honest, we don't really want to encourage sledding on that hill anyway. So we've been discussing with the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club the exchange of this snow machine for a little while now. Before we could do anything, we need to ask you to surplus it. We discussed putting this out to auction, discussed putting it to silent auction. Chantel and I discussed earlier or last week that we've got another idea, and that is rather than putting it out to bid, to actually surplus it and grant it to the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club, but also assign a value to it and take some lodging tax dollars and refund our ER&R fund, which purchased this snowmaker. So I would say take half the value, which we estimate the value is $12,500. So what we would request is you surplus it. You also authorize us to grant it to the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club. and let us transfer a lodging tax to ENR to make that fund full.
To clarify a little bit further, the lodging tax fund has the Leavenworth grant fund.
Correct. Oh, yeah, I should
That's
say,
where
thank you.
he would provide a grant to the ski club.
Yeah, to the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club. If our next action on your agenda is the Leavenworth Fund, we received less than we had available. This wasn't an application that we asked the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club to put forth. This discussion came out after the grant applications were due. So given the fact that we don't have enough applications that to award to we will have excess funds in the Leavenworth funds, we'd like to basically just grant this money or grant the device to the Winter Sports Club and then reimburse ERNR with for that cost.
So if everybody that applied for those grants gets the total amount they asked for, there's still money left over, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'll get to that next action and we can dig into it. There are a number that were ineligible for one reason or another. And also the way we currently have the Leavenworth Fund scoring set up, it's very rare that someone get 100% score. 95 is the highest score that was received this year. And what we do is we apply a factor. If you apply for $10,000, your application scored at 95%, then you would get $9,500. So that is the highest award that we're giving in the Leavenworth.
Those are also 2025's funding.
Yes, they are.
The funding for this would come out of 24's because we did not expense all the.
Yeah, that's true.
24.
We rolled it over.
And remember, there's two in that Leavenworth fund. It's the general fund dollars that goes to the nonprofits for nonprofit. Then the hotel motel, the lodging tax funds the ones that qualify because of their involvement with tourism, those related things. So that's where this would fall under, right?
Yes. Well, all of the Leavenworth Fund applications have to be from nonprofits. The difference is general fund has to have a community benefit and has to take place within city limits. And the lodging tax applications, we created a larger Leavenworth Fund area. And they have to have some nexus to putting that expense up.
So this would essentially be us donating $12,500.
Worth of equipment, yes.
You would still have to have your process, right? Your silent bid, your ad in the paper for the silent bid. So there could potentially be someone else that came in.
And bought it and did.
Yeah, because per your code, you still have to
Right.
surplus it. And you can't just give it away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a minimum amount on the silent bid?
That is something you guys can recommend. And in the write-up, we provided you a rough idea. We couldn't find anything out there this old to compare it to and what's its value. So we just did a depreciation type of value, even though it hasn't been used a whole lot. It is like 10 years old. What's it?
10 years.
Yeah.
So it's not an actual,
10 years old.
so it's not an actual grant to the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club because of our bid process we're required to go through.
Right.
Yeah, I got ahead of myself. I should have just asked you to surplus the item.
Well, I think it's good to give you both sides.
Yeah, right,
Because
yeah.
ultimately, if they are the bidder, then
Right.
you guys approve the grant awards as well. So it is kind of goes hand in hand.
So my next question, should the Leavenworth Winter Sports Club be the winning bid? Let's say above any of the grant request values that we allow. How are we going to cross that bridge?
Well, we just put an estimated value on it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about our grant stipulations, then I would limit it to what we have in the Leavenworth Fund guidelines.
And would this need to be evaluated by the Economic Development Committee through a formal review process, like all of the other applicants?
We could do that if that's your direction. I believe the sports club would like to utilize this year. One of the reasons that they want it is, the reason that they want it is to make snow for the sledding hill at the golf club.
I understand. I'm not trying to be problematic in this process and mostly trying to make sure that our process is equitable for all applicants.
Thanks, Ann.
So do we have an action to surplus it?
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve the surplus of the 2014 SMI snow machine by silent bid.
Second.
Moved by Shane, seconded by Ann. Any other questions? All in favor, let me see your hand. Passes unanimously. And now the next item, Selby, is the Leavenworth Fund.
Yeah, I got ahead of myself again. I apologize for that. So the city received 21 applications for the lodging tax grant program totaling $150,000. $150,950, where we had $178,000 available, and received 18 applications for the general fund grant program totaling $63,525. Those are applications where we had 62,000 available. In your packet is a list of the applicants, the projects, and the award amount. And I already did indicate how the scoring is done by the Economic Development Committee. There's a score sheet for each of the projects. Someone could score 100 and get a fully funded award. That's rare. I think 95 is the highest that we saw in this round in this year. If you have any questions about any of the specific items, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't have any question about any specific one. Selby, I'm just wondering what was failing in there? Was there kind of a systemic thing that was missing from some of these applications? Narrative or justification or?
Some of them were.
That's a lot of folks that didn't get.
There were, and maybe Ann or Shane could help me out here. Everyone had their own specific case or reason why they were not funded. I can say, for example, the high school, the Trout Unlimited wanting us to grant them funds for the Blackbird Island fishing ponds pump. We just didn't see that as an actual tourist facility. We didn't think it was an appropriate use of lodging tax dollars. There's no indication that people are coming to Leavenworth and staying in a hotel so they can go fish in that pond on Blackbird Island.
And some of them just didn't meet the criteria of being within city limit.
Oh, they were even outside or whatever. Okay.
For example, Cascade Community Markets, there wasn't a belief from the committee that community farmers market is attracting people from more than 50 miles away to stay in a hotel to attend the farmers market.
Then there's some projects at TR Learning Center that didn't qualify.
Okay. It just kind of surprised me because I said some of these guys have been to this rodeo a few times. I was surprised they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the criteria are associated with that. If they're applying for the same grant year after year, that actually counts against them because we're really trying to get new events and local nonprofits up and off the ground, and these funds aren't meant to be sustaining for them. They're meant to get them started, right? So if they're coming in 3, 4, 5 years in a row, that they don't get the points for that specific criteria.
Okay. That's the idea.
I don't see backpacking on here. Did they not apply?
It is there. It's Leavenworth United Methodist Church Feed the Kids backpack feeding program.
Yep.
Where is it? Because I can't find
It's
it.
halfway down the table on page 8.
Which one is it? Oh, the
Methodist Church.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve the Leavenworth Fund Grant funding for use in the 2025 as presented and authorizes the finance director to allocate the funding sources in the lodging tax fund and general fund as requested.
Second.
Moved by Shane, seconded by Sharon. Any more questions? All those in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. Last is our emergency declaration, Andy.
Yes, thanks for adding this one on tonight. So last week on Friday, the mayor issued a declaration of emergency regarding well pump number 2 at our well field. And so the resolution before you tonight is ratifying and affirming the mayor's declaration of emergency. And the resolution details what happened, but on September 20th, we were notified that we had an issue with the well pump. On September 23rd, we determined that it wasn't an issue with any of the other electrical equipment out there, but was actually of the motor of the pump itself. And then on October 3rd, when we had an electrician on site, they removed both the motor and the pump itself and determined that the motor needed to be fully replaced. So with that in mind, well pump number 2 is the main well that we operate with our water treatment plant. So well 2 just has a different capacity than the other 2 wells, and it works in tandem best with the water treatment plant. So getting that replaced immediately was of the utmost importance to us. So the emergency declaration is here for you to ratify and affirm the mayor's findings that that was indeed an emergency that needed to be addressed.
What sort of change in timeline would there be if this was not declared an emergency?
It's a pretty substantial timeline difference. If we don't have an emergency, then we need to publicly bid the replacement of the motor, which is a lot more time. So really, this just speeds up our process. We actually were able to overnight the motor. Substantial.
What was the cost on replacement?
Still checking.
Oh, so it hasn't been replaced yet.
We have the motor and now we're evaluating another component of the pump.
Okay.
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve resolution 2024 emergency declaration motor failure of well pump 2.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Zeke. Any other questions? All those in favor, let me see your hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you all. Council report, Sharon.
I just wanted to mention on the 25th, the scrub seal started on my street. I couldn't leave that off. Okay, I attended the Jump Stick Wildflower Steering Committee. Also on the 25th. On the 26th, met at City Hall for a budget review with Chantel and Shane. September 28th, those of us who chose not to, those of us royal ladies who chose not to walk, Andrews Keller, you know, they have those that bump out so people can eat there, and they fixed it so that no one could eat there, be served there until 2. And so we were given these little tickets for those of us walking and any of our family members. And, you know, it's a way better view sitting and watching the parade than it is being in it or walking along with it. So I thought it was a really good parade. In 1957, I was a founding member of the North Wing Drill Team, and they're still continuing to come to this parade. Yes, so they've been going for a very long time. Let's see, I worked on the 29th and the 1st with the Friends of Leavenworth Library book sale downtown. Thank you for letting us have that piece of property. And also on the 2nd, I went to the Planning Commission meeting. On the 3rd, attended the Chelan County Hazardous Mitigation meeting at City Hall, which was really interesting because they had all these maps up on big boards, and one would have all the dams, all the, you know, whatever the different parts were. So I thought it was really interesting. And then on the 4th, I attended along with Carl and Selby, and I can't remember anybody else that was there, attended the Glockenspiel unveiling. So how fun that is, because back in the day when my kids were all really little, that was a big deal in downtown, how that thing go on a lot. And And it's beautifully done. And so I thought that was really cool. And then on the 7th, which was yesterday, Andrea, I found out is quite knowledgeable. And we went over together to Commercial Street where that request for the right-of-way vacation was, because I thought that that trail was gonna be gone too.
Right.
And so I was really happy to find out it wasn't. There's some big old trees out there, that's for sure. And last night I attended the mosquito board meeting and today, here I am. Thanks for listening.
Well,
And?
Quick.
On September 26th, we had our annual Economic Development Committee meeting that was nearly 4 hours long to review all the applications for the Leavenworth Fund. So I would like to thank my fellow committee members, including our stand-in, Mr. Shane Thayer, for going through all of those applications, grading them all in one day, because we find that that is the most equitable process to just get it all done in one day. Along with our fabulous staff, Selby and Sue. And thank you all for passing that this evening to fund all of those great organizations. On the 28th, I was very happy to walk in the Autumn Leaf Parade with the mayor and city administrator and a few city council members. I'm still working on getting the whole council engaged in the parade. I think it should be a requirement. And this next year, I'm also going to work on the planning commission.
there you go.
But it's a great parade. And it's a whole lot of fun and we're at the very beginning. So you're really not in a parade very long.
It's quick.
On Friday, October 4th, I was also at the Glockenspiel rededication. It was very cool to see that operating again. It has been a very long time. And it is such an authentic Bavarian piece of art in our community. So I'm very happy that it's operating again. It's the museum did a great job. And then I also went to Locals Night that Friday night, and the chamber is doing a great job operating Oktoberfest. It was so fun. They keep adding more authentic little pieces into how they operate Oktoberfest, and it was a great time. That's it.
Hey,
Okay, so I'm with Ann on, I had the pleasure of walking next to Ann and learning some good fishing spots. But
It's not all city conversation.
Right. We did walk. I want to put that there. We walked that thing.
We did walk.
And it's only 25 minutes, and I second Ann's motion that all, unless you're medically unable to attend, that you should be suited up in Tracton and participating in Autumn Leaf Festival. I just think it's huge. You know, we should pass a resolution on that. Or you're just, you know, you pay that big paycheck you get gets cut in half or something. So that was a great time. And then I missed I planned to make it for the Glockenspiel, but I was up working on a chimney. But I did make the parade Saturday for the Oktoberfest parade back to the fest hall. And then I got to serve as an ambassador on Saturday afternoon because our church is one of those nonprofit groups and got it right in the middle of all, I did that last year, right in the middle of all the workings. And it was a sight to see because they had a lot of stuff, lots of moving parts. And I think it's a smaller footprint, and I think it's getting better every year. So I was glad to be part of it. So.
The whole wristband thing was brand new.
Yeah, and they got, so that's my report.
Right, Shane.
On September 26th, I attended the finance committee meeting with Chantel and Sharon, and we talked about the prelim numbers for the 25-26 budget and our priorities. That night, I filled in for Clint at the economic development meeting. It was really cool to go through all those applications and award funds to those organizations. And I rode in the carriage with Selby and Travis for the Autumn Leaf Parade on the 28th. And that's my report.
Great, thank you. I won't say much other than I too was in that parade. It is fun and the most fun part was I didn't get booed at all. Or I didn't hear them. So, that's a first.
Do you normally get booed?
I usually get, I hear a couple of times,
Oh.
but it doesn't,
That's tacky.
it's fine.
I heard a lot of cheers when you got.
It was fun. And I went to the banquet that night where Royal Bavarians host all the other groups that come and that's always fun too. And they actually had me get up and welcome them and that was fun to do and to support all the Autumn Leaf and the Royal Bavarians and all that work. So yeah, it was fun. You see a lot of the same people that come every year. But what's fun is that they're all part of an association that go to each other's events. And they have a pretty large circuit around the Northwest, and including Penticton up in Canada and stuff. And I think they have to go to I think there's 12 or 13 of them that are participate, and you have to go to 9 of them or something. You omit 3, but the fun part is everybody wants to come. We're the last one in that whole group, right? The fall event. And everybody likes to come to Leavenworth, so you get a lot. Everybody saves one of their times to participate and comes to Leavenworth. So it was a lot of fun. And that's it. Selby.
Thank you, Mayor. I also was honored to participate in the Autumn Leaf Parade and rode in the carriage with Shane and Travis. I was also honored to be asked to tap the keg at Oktoberfest because the mayor was out of town. And I do believe I'm one of the only, if not the only city administrator who gets to wear lederhosen for my official duties. So that's just kind of.
He almost made a mistake and wore him to Yakima.
I did. I took them off when I got there. So collective bargaining Teamsters continues. We had Cabadow Associates attend our last session to explain the compensation study and to answer their questions. Our next negotiation session is next Tuesday. We hope to wrap up negotiations in mid-November. We'll see how it goes. The new Horseshoe Lake parking lot next to the Bavarian Bakery was online in time for Autumn Leaf. And it's appeared to be full the last couple of weekends. So I just want to thank you, council, for approving that lease agreement. And staff has looked through the car wash and with a bit of cleanup and adding some climate control for the offices, it appears fit to move the parking staff into that location in the coming months.
Cool.
And the Vector is being moved to the former self-serve car wash bay to keep it out of the elements and heated so it can be deployed at a moment's notice. Also, negotiations with the golf club on the lease agreement continue, and I'll be meeting with members of their board on Friday.
Great, Chantel.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. 2 updates for you tonight, council. So budget, things are still chugging along. If there's one person since Rona has departed that would like to attend, Sharon, thank you for coming to our last one. And join Shane and Zeke, you're welcome to. If others are interested in hearing what we're talking about, you're welcome to Zoom in, but you cannot speak, you cannot participate, or you can watch it afterwards. My FUPA last time, about halfway through the meeting, we realized we were on mute.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up.
I
wasn't gonna bring that up.
So I'll be sure to not mute this time. It's very high level numbers. We don't go into the details. We're just looking at summary numbers. And my goal for this coming one is to give us a comparison of where we're sitting versus our financial policy. So we'll hopefully have everything in play. I'm almost there. Of course, utilities are up in the air. I've got stuff in, but depending on what the decision is, that will change the numbers. Auction. We closed our auction last Friday. The 6 pieces of equipment were out there. Unfortunately, 2 did not receive any bids, and that would be the 2 large items. That was the street sweeper and the 2019 Vector. We will try again. It doesn't cost us anything to put it there. We actually don't pay anything. The buyers pay premiums to the site. So we'll see how that goes. We did get some comment about the street sweeper, which was a bit discerning. The commenters let us know that it was going to be very difficult for us to sell it for the price that we were asking, mainly because the manufacturer of the engine of that model has had lots and lots of problems with those engines going out. Ours happens to be in good shape and doesn't have any problems. So we'll try to sell that one. But the good news is we were very successful on the other 4 pieces of equipment. The 2004 Tiger Vector, we had a reserve minimum of $5,000. We received $13,201. The 2015 Aerator had a reserve of $1,500 and we received $2,542. The 05 O'Brien Trailer Jetter had a reserve of $2,500. We received $5,300. And the 07 Bobcat, I love Bobcats. They're always so successful. We had a reserve of $15,000 and we received $27,100.
Wow.
Which was just shy of $4,000 of what we paid for it in 2007.
Wow.
So in total, we were reserved minimums was 24,000. We brought in 48,143, so nearly double.
Nice work.
If you need a sweeper or a vector, look for that in spring.
Peggy.
Very quickly, we did receive some qualified applicants for the senior planner position, and we will be interviewing this week. And hope to have somebody on board by the end of the month. So
How many applications did you get, Maggie?
4.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's great.
So that's exciting news. We are still super busy with inspections, so if we see Christian, give her a kudos because she is out in the field all the time. I think she has a 4-hour inspection tomorrow at the apartments. So yeah, she's working hard. I don't really have much more to say other than thanks for your patience. So I continue to learn.
Andy.
Yeah, Mark Bavier passed his water treatment plant operator 2 exam last week. He's exciting. We are working to get a restroom trailer on Front Street to replace the porta potties that are down there, so stay tuned. We've been working on it for a while, but we have a path forward there. And then last but not least, I mentioned this earlier, if we were not at the last meeting, it would be really beneficial if you could watch the recording of the study session where we went over the utility rate study. Because the next presentation will build off the last one. And I know we keep talking about the utility rate study, but it is just so critical for all of the projects that we're trying to move forward. So I'm here if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to have a meeting with you and walk through some of that in detail too. That's it.
All right. Thank you. And now we are. Where's my cheat sheet? Ready to go into executive session. RCW 4231.1B. Property selection, site or acquisition, 10 minutes with no action to follow. I would entertain the motion.
So you guys need a signature?
And move. Who's second?
Second.
Sharon seconds. All those in favor, let me see your hand.
Yeah.
It passes. We'll go into.
Yeah, thanks for coming, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna kick out. I'll have to stay.
Yep, you need a signature.
Please.
Who's your teacher?
So we'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Mr. Allen.
What's that?
Graduated with one of my.
Down here?
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you. I've got some stories.
I bet you do. Yes, sounds good.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Or maybe dessert.
Yeah.